Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City Council meeting, Titusville City Council meeting of November 13th, 2018 at 6:30. We do have a quorum. I'll call this meeting to order. And do we have a minister that would like to, or anyone who would like to say the invocation? Not seeing any, please join me in a moment of silence. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. First item is approval of minutes. Somebody would like to make a motion?
I'd move to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting on October 23rd at 5:30 and October 23rd at 6:30, and special city council meeting on October 17th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Special recognitions and presentations. We have a quarterly report from Project-Based Learning.
Yes, sir. In May 2017, the city entered into a grant agreement with Project-Based Learning Incorporated, aka Fab Lab, to purchase equipment to establish and operate Fab Lab at 4405 Capron Road in Titusville. One provision of the agreement was that Project-Based Learning Incorporated would provide a quarterly report to council for a period not less than 3 years. The report is provided by Fab Lab is attached. A copy of the agreement with Project-Based Learning is also attached, and I sent you a follow-up. We had a council member with some questions, and you have the hard copy with the response from both Fab Lab and from staff in hard copy on your desk.
I see a light. Member Barringer.
Thank you. After reading the report, I think I concluded what I had thought was happening at Fab Lab, which was very concerning. So after reviewing the agreement, in short, I think the Fab Lab is with good intent and good idea. I think organizationally, they are not at the capacity to continue at what they had intended. This, of course, is to me is concerning because of the amount of money that we've provided Fab Lab to get stood up in the city, and so we committed to $50,000 to them. They've spent well over like $36,000, somewhere about $33,000. But ultimately, it's what happens if Fab Lab doesn't make it. Now, to give some scope, the idea or the intent is that it's an organization where people can go to work on STEAM-related activities, inclusive of adults to get training, and inclusive of children to get exposed to STEAM. With the idea that over 3 years, they would meet certain conditions that we had agreed upon through an agreement that showed progress and really made it worthwhile for us to leverage their existence in our community. Since then, I think that they are open 2 days a week for 4 hours a day. The counts for a year stated 600 students, 600 visits from students, which I understand the field trips, and then it was about 500 visits from an adult over a year. When you break that down, that's about 15 per week. And when we start looking at that kind of a number for 33,000 up to 50,000, number one, I am concerned about the investment and the vision that was painted to us about what they would achieve, but also the investment in the equipment that we purchased. What happens to it if they go defunct? As part of the discussion for Fab Lab, one of the things that we had put on there by intent were some clawbacks, just in case that was to happen. Make no mistake that I'm appreciative for the effort, but they noted that they're running at a $4,000 a month loss. And again, they're at 2 days a week. They noted that one of the criteria that talked about a place for paid internships, that they do not have the funds to continue on with even a manager in the building, and that it's being run solely on volunteer basis. So I think that they are beyond life support just for this location, which then leaves us as a council to determine one of 3 outcomes. One is, what do we do if they shutter the door? 2, do we invest more into this to help stand it up, as we've invested already? Or 3, we just kind of be patient and wait. Of all the courses, the be patient and wait is the one that I am least favorable for the purpose of, I think that the writing is on the wall. I was more concerned that in the report that they stated options of kind of where equipment goes, we're not sure, when we explicitly, I believe, had stated that the equipment is leaned and then returned to Titusville. And I believe that the discussion was that the equipment as such, just in discussion, I don't know if we came to consensus or agreement, but the equipment could be used maybe to support activities at Brevard Public Schools, so that the training that's intent for our young students to get into STEAM, if the equipment's here, it's bought by the city of Titusville, maybe we could land it in some of our schools and they could use it to do the training that we're trying to get in the community. I would argue that we're at that point now. There is nothing in the report that makes me think that they are solvent specific to the Titusville location, nor will they succeed for another 2 years, which would meet the obligations. As such, I think that there's an opportunity to execute either recovery of the equipment or revisit, at least have them come to a presentation and really talk about what their plans are. Because if we've invested in the equipment, it's new. In the hands of, as an example, the school district, they have the funding to keep that equipment in shape. They have, and they can find that support, and they can probably pay a teacher at one of our local high schools. The outcome would be positive. In contrast, if I'm a dying organization, when something breaks, I probably won't have the money to repair it, and or vice versa, which would raise some concerns. That's a presumption. It's not warranted, but that's just, that's what I would think. So that's where I'm at. I was very concerned with what they wrote, but I'm grateful that they were forthcoming in where they're at.
I don't know if you'll find anybody to argue with, because I happen to agree with what you're saying. Unfortunately, they have not met our expectations, and I don't see anything from the report that indicates they can, but I'll let the rest of the council talk about it. Member Nelson.
I was going to suggest that we ask them to come up and make a presentation. Member Behringer, one of the groups that was talking to them was Brian Cam and the Space Consortium. And David had talked to them about partnering and letting them borrow the equipment to do training. And that would be RUAG, OneWeb, Blue Origins in there. A bunch of different people were in there. So that's a possibility, but I agree. I think David needs to come and talk to us.
Member Diesel.
Similarly so. I agree with you, Member Behringer. The concerns are great, and it concerns me, quite honestly, that they're not here with the bright eyes and enthusiastic smiles that they were when they first presented. There's a lot of questions out there now, and clearly I also agree with you. I think that their intent and their passion was sincere, and it's disappointing to see where they're at now. I went to the site several times in that first year, in the first 6 months probably more accurately, and there were kids walking down the street just couldn't wait to get there, running down the street to get there. And to be open 2 days a week makes it hard for any kid to know when they're going to be there. So very disappointing, but I also would like to have them stand in front of us and answer some questions, and they seem to be forthright and honest on the report. I'd like to hear if this is worth carrying on or not. So, but I'd like to see them in person. I
don't see any of the lights. I agree. And I would also like staff to take a look at, I'm not going to ask you now, but what our obligations are and what our clawbacks are and so forth, and what options we have on equipment and so forth at the next meeting. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
I agree with it. We would.
And also ask them to come and make a presentation to council that we're concerned with.
Yes, sir. Just so council knows, we have asked them to come.
Ask them again and tell
Yes,
them
sir.
the council is very serious about it at this point. If they choose not to, that's their point, but their privilege, I guess. But then we will have to take action, obviously. So we'll leave it up to them, but we would like to see them here. And I appreciate the fact that you've asked, but we'll give them one more shot, in fairness. Okay.
So my question would be, should we go ahead and table the report, or should we accept the report?
Well, you can recognize they filed their report, and as part of that motion, ask them to come and give a live report, and we can find out what they're thinking. With
Okay.
regard to the equipment, you're right, we do have clawbacks, there are
Yeah.
options. One of those in the agreement is they agree that if they default and we seize the equipment, it could be utilized for a nonprofit, for educational. So I think one of the discussions we might have with them leading up to that meeting and at the meeting is, what is their intention?
Yeah.
If they're not going to continue to provide a public purpose, let them know, then we're not going to entertain, of course, any future requests for money, but then what do we want to do? Maybe we reach an agreement on how we're going to utilize that equipment we paid for, and is there partnership opportunities
Okay.
with Whispering Hills or other nonprofits that we deem to be a public purpose? And I think that would be a fruitful conversation, and all of those options are available to us under the contract.
Okay, so I'm going to cheat and make that motion, based on what Mr. Broom said.
He's not going to like that.
I know
That's
he's
fine.
not.
That's fine. That's
Did
fine.
you?
He says
No.
okay.
Okay, all right. You have the motion then.
I hope the clerk does.
Clerk, is the motion clear to you? Okay, we're set. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Boards and commissions?
Yes, sir. Before we do that, I'd like the clerk to go ahead and read the rules of speaking.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I missed it again. It's not on my,
Individuals wishing to speak on public and non-public hearing agenda items must complete a sign-up card and present it to the clerk prior to the item being introduced. Those wishing to speak on quasi-judicial public hearings must complete a sign-up card and sign the oath. Individuals wishing to speak on non-agenda items may do so under petitions from the public present. This opportunity is offered twice in the meeting, and individuals may speak at either the first or second petitions, but not both. No sign-up card is required. Sign-up and oath cards are located on the table in the council chamber. Citizens shall not comment on any issue more than once during the meeting. All comments except petitions and requests must address the pending issue, and citizens are given 3 minutes to speak on all items.
thank you, clerk. Continue, sir, boards and commissions.
Yes, sir. Dual membership of the Titusville Environmental Commission and the Titusville Planning and Zoning Commission. Staff is requesting that the City Council appoint one of the regular members from the Planning and Zoning Commission to also serve as a regular member to the Titusville Environmental Commission. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, staff polled the members to determine if any of the members are willing to serve on the Titusville Environmental Commission to satisfy the requirement of the code. The following member is willing to be considered to serve as a regular member of the Titusville Environmental Commission with a term to expire on 30 November 2021. And that application is with or for Mr. Dwight Severs.
Have we, is this a productive thing? I don't even recall exactly why we did this. And I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but before appointing someone, I think we want to see if we want to do it or not. I mean, the members have been gracious enough to work, and they work very hard on the P&Z. And I appreciate anybody that volunteers to do it, but I'm not sure what we need it for, so. Anyway, Member Nelson.
I agree with you. I think maybe way back there was a purpose in having somebody sitting on both boards, but right now, the way we structured it, TEC is more of a sustainability board, and therefore, I'm not sure what the benefit is in having one member on both boards. I think it'd be good if they talked. I think it would be good if they maybe swapped reports here and there. But I'm thinking that we really don't need to do this.
I agree. Member Berenger. As Vice Mayor. I'm
Thank you,
sorry.
sir. No, that's fine, sir. I believe that the purpose of doing it, I get the purpose. So in short, the idea is that as part of our planning and development, you have somebody who also understands the concern of the environmental board, right? And I think that being part of both boards is more effective than reading the minutes. I believe in practical reality, it works better as such. On the other hand, I think Mr. Severs is about as qualified as you'll get relative to civic service and understanding the issues and dynamics.
Certainly.
In a lot of these. I would be interested, though, I think to Mayor's point and Member Nelson's point, is actually looking at what are we trying to achieve with these boards. One of our strategic goals for this year was effective governance with our boards. And so I would argue pause this appointment at this point. I think in November, somewhere about, we have environmental or conservation workshop, something like this. And ultimately, when you look at Titusville, and we've been running into it, is that when we talk about development in Titusville and our conservation areas, where we are slim on just areas that are ready to turn dirt on, and the areas that we have are really, for subdivision-wise, it's conservation areas. And so I would be interested to see what we take away from that workshop relative to conservation understanding, goals, and what we're going to do in the next 10 years relative to our conservation development. And then take a look at how do we want to structure our boards moving forward with the TEC and our planning and zoning. So I just think that do the workshop, come back, take a look at the boards, do the boards meet what we took away from the workshop, and then adjust the boards accordingly, as opposed to just filling the boards to keep doing what we're doing. So,
Member Diesel.
I guess I'd ask the city manager what your feeling is on that as far as having the one person on both boards. I know clearly there's a reason for that, but if not, then I agree over here. I don't know that we need to put one person on both boards. If they don't want to just read the minutes, then certainly the meetings are open to go attend, and they could alternate members to attend the meeting, whereas one person's not being that. So, city manager, if you have anything on that.
Yes, sir. This is the only dual appointment that the city has, and I think as several members have discussed, that this is a long-standing dual board membership that probably should be relooked, in my opinion.
What? I'm sorry.
Relook that.
We should probably relook it.
Relook. Okay. Member Stokel?
Yep. Do we know if Mr. Severs wanted to be on the board, or was it more of, hey, we need somebody, do you mind volunteering? Do we know his feeling on it? And if we were to remove this, potentially, would that prevent somebody from serving on both boards should they want to?
My understanding is Mr. Severs was the only one who volunteered from the P&Z to serve in the dual role.
Okay, and if we were to remove it, somebody could, in theory, still serve on two boards should they want to? If it
No.
was not, no, okay.
They could attend, however.
They can attend, but they wouldn't
But
be
they
a
would
voting
not be
member.
allowed.
And we would have to rewrite the code in order to accomplish that. So it would be a series of meetings to accomplish that.
Okay.
Member Nelson.
Thank you. And my thought is, if you're going to have a member serving on both boards, it would be more important to have somebody from the TEC serving on planning and zoning to help them with that, than have somebody on planning and zoning to be over on the TEC discussing water quality, solar issues, solar energy type issues. That just doesn't, it makes sense going the other way, but it doesn't make sense going the way we have it. So I'm in favor of tabling it and letting staff look at it.
I think that, hold your motion for 1 second.
Oh. Okay.
I think that's a very good idea, and staff could ask each board as to what their opinions are and what they think the positives and negatives of this, and is it necessary? I'd like to hear from the boards themselves. They tell us a lot. Would you like to make a motion now?
So I would move to table the appointment of a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission to the Titusville Environmental Commission, and ask staff to look at it and come back with suggestions.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Next item, sir.
Yes, sir. Accept the North Brevard Library District Board's semi-annual report is written.
Okay. Any discussion? Not hearing any. Does anybody have a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the North Brevard Library District Board semi-annual report as written.
I have a motion. Can I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Quiet. North Brevard, we did that one. Municipal Code.
Municipal Code Enforcement Board, currently there is one vacancy for an alternate member with an unexpired term to expire on 31 October 2020. There is currently one application on file, Mr. Jacob Edwards, who has expressed his willingness and desire to serve on this board. His application is part of your packet. Currently, there is no other applicants for your consideration.
Mr. Edwards indicated he would like to come up and speak to us. You are certainly welcome to, sir, if you'd like to do that now.
My name is Jacob Edwards. I'm a resident here in Titusville. I've been a resident here for over a year. And as a 22-year-old college student who also works full-time, I am very interested in getting involved into our community and ultimately making a difference. Here in Titusville, I feel there's really potential to grow, and I feel that given this opportunity to join the Code Enforcement Board would be a great start for me to make a difference and to better our community. I respect everything you have done to our city. I thank you for your service, and hope I get appointed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for applying.
Can I make that motion?
You sure can.
He doesn't see it sometimes, but I have a number waiting.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Mr. Member Diesel.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, it's two. She asked me a question.
She does that all the time. Anyway, first of all, I appreciate you coming up. It's great to see somebody 22 years old, lived here a year, ready to get involved, and that's what we need, and I appreciate that. The second thing is, before I even saw you and before you even spoke, I had hit my button because I don't often get emails about board appointees or applicants. I had 2 or 3 emails from people I respect greatly telling me what a fine person you are and how committed you'd be to this position. So I wanted to get that said before we went forward, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, Coach.
now I can go? Okay. And I will add to what Mr. Diesel said. He is enthusiastic enough that he went to training yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah. Didn't have to, and he was there. So I would move to appoint Jacob Edwards as the alternate member of the Municipal Code Enforcement Board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Congratulations, sir, and thank you for coming in. Next is petitions and requests from the public. Would anybody like to speak? I don't see anybody moving. Okay. Consent agenda. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir. Mayor, we, and council, we have no cards from the public present. Council, would you like to pull any of the items, consent agenda items A through K? And I would request that we pull item G, which the CRA disapproved during the previous meeting.
Do I hear a request for that?
So moved.
We'll pull that one, item G. And we'll go to, oh, you're going to do the reading.
Yes, sir. I'll read for the record if council has no other items that they would like to pull.
I don't see any.
Okay. Consent agenda item 8A, approve the use of Sourcewell contract, formerly National Joint Alliance, for the purchase of 9 2019 Interceptor vehicles from Allen J. Fleet Sales at a cost of $50,406.33 for each vehicle, totaling $453,656.97, and approve the Florida Sheriff Association's bid for a purchase of one 2019 Ford police truck from Duval Ford Fleet Sales for $46,027. The total amount of this project is $499,684. Consent agenda item 8B, approve the buyout leases with Mears Motor Leasing for 7 police vehicles and 8 Interceptor vehicles for a total price of $66,689. Consent agenda item 8C, appropriate and approve the use of $10,000 in forfeiture funds for repair and maintenance of forfeiture vehicles. Appropriate and approve the use of $4,000 in forfeiture funds to purchase crime prevention materials and promote various services the police department supports, and approve the attached budget amendment. Consent agenda item 8D, approve and appropriate $575 in state forfeiture funds to provide extensive leadership training to our supervisors and provide the appropriate budget amendment. Consent agenda item 8E, approve the budget amendment in the amount of $27,700 as recommended by the CRA to add funds to the CRA building grants account to provide sufficient funds to provide a commercial interior renovation grant for major renovation projects within the CRA. Consent agenda item 8F, approve the mayor to sign the 2018 Tree City USA recertification application. Consent agenda item 8H, approve and accept Amendment 1 of the Resilient Titusville Agreement with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and authorize the mayor to execute the based upon the final approval of the city attorney. Consent agenda item 8I, approve advisability for staff to review the land development regulations relating to parking lots. Consent agenda item 8J, approve the collective bargaining agreement between the IAFF Local 2445 and the City of Titusville, and approve the retroactivity of wages back 6 months to 1 April 2018 for the contract year FY 17 and 18. And consent agenda item 8K, provide staff direction on signage for Kirk Point Riverfront Park. There are no resolutions. The roll call vote is not required.
Okay. At this point, we have to approve items A through F and H through J. I need a motion.
I would make that motion.
H through K, you're right.
Mayor, I'd sort of like to, hindsight, Mr. Kirk is here, and I'd sort of like to talk about Kirk Point,
Pull that out.
pull that out just for a
Okay.
minute.
Then we'll go back to H to J.
H through J.
I was right the first time.
You were? So the motion is to approve those items.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from anyone? If not, I'm going to do a roll call anyway, so. Clerk, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Member Diesel?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Okay, let's go back to the first item, poll, please. Which is G.
No, sir, that we,
That was deleted.
yep. The only one I believe Councilmember Nelson wanted to
okay.
speak about is item K.
K, yes, please.
And my question is, do we have a plan, or are we just approving the development of some signage?
Ma'am, in your packet is a example of what the sign would look like. We modeled the sign that we put out at Dre Park. The
Okay.
size of the sign and the location that we're considering is by the pergola and out by the dock. It seems to be a very picturesque location that a lot of people, during homecoming, a lot of kids are out taking pictures there.
Okay. Has Mr. Kirk seen it?
This is for you to provide direction to us. If you say it's okay, we'll get it to the family to have their review.
I'd sort of like to have him actually look at it and add some input in it.
I'll use my
Go ahead.
prerogative, sir. Did you want to talk on this issue? It's your sign.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Mayor, council, and staff. My name is Bob Kirk. 213 Harrison Street is my office. I have been trying to look at this sign for months to see what was up, you know, what they were going to use down there. I even offered, if they needed some more money in the kettle, that I would furnish the money to make a permanent-looking sign that won't be falling down or rotting away in a couple of months. And I haven't been able to get anybody's attention. I did get one phone call to want to know what I wanted to look at the sign or whatever, what I wanted with the city manager. I would like to look at it, and I don't think that's asking too much. I've
You
got
already
$500,000 in it down there now, my gift for the property.
And I did.
Uh,
I did.
Council.
And I don't mind putting, you know, if it needs it, some more in to make it something that Titusville will be proud of. And there are people, we want to come in and take a picture of that with the cape behind it and the launch pad of NASA and all that, you know, some basic information. It probably has on there. Like I say, I haven't seen it, and I've been trying to get a look at it.
Well, so you have already been given that ability, as the city manager said, that you will be given all of that, all of the information that we're approving.
Oh,
And-
okay.
And
But
then,
if I can help there, I'll do it. Okay, I told you.
but
I'd be
I'd
glad
like to
to.
remind you, Mr. Kirk, that they still want to see the Space Center, right? You know, with
I want to keep it low to the ground so people can see over it. Thank you very much.
Bob, thank
Looking
you.
forward to it. Call me, let me know when I come in.
All right, so we need that item approved. Item K. Have a motion?
So do we need a motion, or we're just saying,
No,
providing?
You've already made the motion, actually, to let him look at
Okay.
it, right?
Yeah.
What's in there?
Yeah. What all staff is wanting to know is conceptually, is this what council would like us to proceed with? And then we'll get with Mr. Kirk and flesh out the details of what the sign
Is
is.
that your motion?
Say yes.
Say yes.
I know what you're
Can I say that I looked at the proposal for the sign, and it does the job, but it's not exactly exciting, so
Well, we'll be able to make that
we
judgment.
need to make it a little more exciting.
But generally speaking, it's,
Generally speaking, yes,
okay. And then Mr. Kirk will come back and we'll discuss it at that time.
yes.
Okay. I have a motion, and I'll ask for that
With
second.
discussion.
Yes, ma'am. You're first, even though I don't see it. No.
Sorry, yeah. No, I just wanted to make sure, just to clarify, I would feel more comfortable once Mr. Cook has seen it, his opinion on it, and then I would like it to come back to us.
Yes.
Oh, it'll
Just-
definitely come back to you.
Okay,
This is
that's-
just
I-
direction.
Okay, good. I just want to make that clear.
That was the
And then
motion.
I would feel, yes, much better
What's your
about moving
second?
forward. So, yes.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
You had to pull that out of us.
Huh?
You had to pull that out of us.
I know. But we're already into tomorrow now, I think. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any or hearing any, I will, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign? Passes unanimously. Okay. Ordinance second reading.
Next item is item 9A, which is ordinance number 50, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances to create a height overlay to increase maximum building heights in specified areas by creating Chapter 29 special districts and overlays, specifically creating Article 9 height overlay, Sections 29-160 through Sections 29-164, and amending Chapter 37 definitions, 37-1 definitions to add definitions relating to height, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code. This is the second reading and final public hearing.
The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended denial as written. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended further changes based on their comments. On 7 August 2018, City Council conducted a workshop to receive public input regarding increasing building heights. Based upon positive public input and subsequent City Council discussion, staff developed the attached ordinance creating a height overlay. During the first public hearing on 23 October 2018, Council requested staff work with the community to address concerns expressed at the meeting. Changes to the ordinances were described and italicized within your packet, highlighted within the body of the ordinance. The provisions of the ordinance are attached in your packet. Staff has provided you a copy of the height overlay and the language in hard copy, and Ms. Busaka is available to answer any questions that you may have on this, your second reading and final public hearing on ordinance 50-2018.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Busaka, the Planning and Zoning made some comments on this, and I hope you can address those issues.
Well, there were several concerns that were expressed. In general, I believe that most of the members of the Planning and Zoning Board simply do not feel comfortable with additional height. They, I believe that they were concerned about the fact that the information that you've been provided, the large map, shows the current height that is permitted within the city, and you can see that by and large, most of the city has a 35-foot minimum height. Along the lagoon, which is shown in kind of a gray color here, the maximum is 50 feet. Now, there are some areas such as Willow Creek and Antigua Bay, which have master plans, and those are depicted in the specific master plan. But the additional height of perhaps as high as 120 feet, I believe they felt was a very significant increase. There was also concerns about the fact that this was designed around, it appeared to be around one parcel. I believe they were discussing the Kennedy Point parcel because there were people who had come to discuss that, and I believe they're here in the audience as well. And so they simply did not feel comfortable with additional height.
This is not the whole area, though,
No,
correct?
no, sir. This is not. What staff did was that we identified areas that we felt there would be minimal conflicts, because we're looking at areas in the overlay that are generally from Buffalo Road north, from Cheney Highway south to Kennedy Point, and then from essentially the north boundary of Antigua Bay down to the south end of the city boundaries. And we feel that most of those areas, because they do not have single family adjacent to that, we would not see the large number of conflicts that we would perhaps see in other areas. Staff's approach would be that, based on council direction, that we would go through in a methodical manner to look at height along specifically the corridors where we see mixed use, and with the intent that we would continue to protect the single family, which has a maximum height of 35 feet. In addition to that, I just wanted to comment that there have been a couple of changes that have been made. I want to highlight that. The first is that the map that you see as part of the ordinance itself with the overlay on it has one change. There was a piece of property that was erroneously omitted, and so that was changed. Secondly, we had a question about the area south of Kennedy Point, and we wanted to clarify that the property in that area went between State Road 50 and the Kennedy Point Park. We also had some discussions. The original ordinance talked about properties abutting single-family residential uses shall be no more than 35 feet higher than the abutting home. We have amended that section to say that it would also include vacant property zoned single-family residential, so that if there were a potential for single-family, then the height would be reduced. I want to be clear that the code currently is written as 10 stories or 120 feet, whichever is greater. We have heard some concerns that perhaps there should be a whichever is less, because 10 stories could, in some instances, have rather tall stories, and you really don't have a specific number of feet. Many people feel comfortable talking about height in feet rather than in stories, so I wanted to bring that to your attention. And then also, there has been a request, and this was at the first meeting, where some citizens came and talked about the fact that the parking area may be on the first floor of a development and the commercial uses may be on the second floor. So the code was amended to allow additional height in the mixed-use building where the parking is the lowest floor and the commercial uses are on the second floor. And finally, the map for transitional zones has been improved to be more clear. And there's language that says that transitional zones will not be required along property lines that abut publicly owned parks or major water bodies, feeling that perhaps the amount of concern about height on those areas where there would really be no major development would be less. So those are the changes that have been made, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, Member Diesel.
Yeah, clearly looking for a little more clarification when they say they're concerned about or don't like height. What were their comments about not liking height?
There was one member who asked about the history of the additional height in the city, talked about the referendum that had been put out a number of years ago, and the fact that the citizens had a great concern about height. There was a discussion about could there be a before and after date so that certain buildings that were constructed before could not have additional height. There was some discussion about the fact, as I said, that that there was compatibility issues between heights and that they had not, the Planning and Zoning Board had not seen detailed study showing all of the different uses and how compatible those would be based on the overlay. So I think that, as I said, I think the largest concern was the fact that the maximum height is currently between 35 and 50 feet. And when they look at a potential doubling of that, they felt like there had not been enough discussion and perhaps enough analysis to support that.
And I don't really even expect you to answer this, but I'm not sure what more analysis would be needed to know how high a building is. You know, and we have the buildings right there on the river that I think are very attractive, actually, across from what used to be Titusville Little League, Sandpoint Park. Don't misunderstand me. I know there's some concerns there, too. There's always going to be concerns. Having been at Titusville High School for 35 years, I'll never forget the day they took down the old Howard Johnsons, and all of a sudden I could see the river. And that was great. But if you build a two-story building, I can't see it anyway. So I'm not sure what the difference in that perspective, because I remember much of that discussion having been a resident of the tall buildings. We're not, the riverfront, we're not going to see it. Well, whether it's a 1 or a 2 or a 10-story building, you're still not going to see it. But I would also add to that I think this city has done a tremendous job of preserving Riverview. If you drive along Melbourne and you drive along some of the other areas that have the river to their right, coming north, they don't have all the river options and views that we have provided, and that's certainly a council previous to me. So I'm very proud of that. The Kirk Park that we're talking about now, outstanding. And I'm very proud of what we've done and thought cautiously about taking away Riverview property. But in this case, I don't understand the word, we're concerned about height. I would say that I've sat up here long enough now to know when we have contractors come up and say, Titusville's running out of places to build. We have the wetlands, we have the highlands, we don't have a lot of places to go. And at some point, we're going to have to go up. And it's something, and that's why we had a workshop. And that's why we had a long discussion. And that's, again, we're not moving, without caution. We're not moving without thought. We're not moving without workshop. We're not moving without hearing the citizens. But in this case, I don't understand the concern about height, and I think it should be done very cautiously, very specifically, perhaps one by one even. But I do think that we need to be careful about we're not going to do this and we're not going to do that, and then we're going to say we're not going to grow.
If I could, there's one other item that I have forgotten. There is a US 1 Corridor master plan, and that master plan currently discusses height, and the maximum height that is conceived of in that plan is 50 feet. So I think that some of the people who particularly liked that plan and didn't want to see change also utilized that plan as one potential reason to deny this.
And I guess it would be difficult for me to say, again, what's the difference between your 50 feet and 100 feet or 75 feet? It sounds like we just are kind of getting a little paralysis with analysis. And I use that sometimes, and this seems appropriate to me. And I'm sure I'll get some emails and calls on that. But that's where I think we're at.
Member Nelson?
I know the project that we're talking about. It's Mr. Oliver's, and that's one of the proposals for going in that area, although my guess is if we open it up, there will be other people that want to come in behind us, behind him. I will say that out campaigning, I did show the hotel to several different people, and out of, say, the 30 people I showed it to, they were all young, and they were like, how fast can we get it? So there are people out there that are really looking to see us develop and become something a little more sophisticated than what we are now. And I think they're probably in the majority. It seems like they're in the majority because I haven't had anybody tell me, don't do it. So I think there is a need for that here. Obviously, it's going to impact our revenues, it's going to impact our employment, and it's going to become a focal point for that area. And so I think we need to do it.
I just want to make one more point. At the last meeting, council asked that we would notify all of the property owners. We have done that. And to my knowledge, there has not been any phone calls. We were all ready to have lots of phone calls with people who were concerned, and there were no phone calls by anyone in the overlay. Now, I did speak to one individual who'd like to extend the overlay.
Yes.
But I have not spoken to anyone who was concerned about their land in the overlay.
And how many people have you talked to who said, can we have a restaurant?
Quite a number, quite a number.
I mean, it's like you go out in public, you go out to the grocery store and they stop you and it's like, can we have a restaurant? Can we have a place to go? And so for me, this is something we need to do. I would like to see the historic area sort of preserved, because I don't think that's compatible. But I think we do need to extend the overlay to different areas. I'm sitting here thinking Big Apple Plaza, I don't know what it's called now. I still call it the Big Apple Plaza, across from
Sandpoint Village or something like that.
Sandpoint. The area across from the marina. How about that? The old Florida Wonderland would be a great spot. You've got Somerset, you've got Imperial Towers, which is now Bay Towers, and hopefully somebody's going to come in and redo that. So if any of these places, Harbor Point, Somerset, if something happens to them, they need to be able to build back to where they were. So I'm thinking that we need to expand that overlay. So that's my 2 cents.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Actually, I'm with Member Nelson on that. I think it's too restrictive in contrast to B&Z's critiques of it. I think you should go both sides of the road. So if you're going up on one side, go up on the other, and see where that lands us. I think that is a good first step. I think we can go a little bit further. In my heart, I'm comfortable all the way down the line, all the way down the shoreline, is where I'm at with 2 considerations. When it abuts single family, I would be interested to hear from a transition, if the idea was that you could go up all the way down the shoreline, what percentage of single family would that become or make a problem potentially? The second would be that the transition going up, I think at this point it's the only way to go. My only concern is the left and right from one building to the next building, the space in between. So, and I know that we have design and zoning appropriate to that. So as an example, building A ends here, building B starts here. That space in between is what the community, I think, is trying to do to look out to the river. If you've got 4 stories or you got 10 stories, I can't see it the same, but I can see through your left and right. So that's my only concern, is the left and right in between. I think that we have appropriate zoning, and I believe we have appropriate ordinances already in place, so I feel comfortable with there. The only thing is I would expand the current overlay to include both sides of the road. Thank you.
I don't see any lights, but I do want to make a comment. I think we have something in front of us that doesn't go to the other issues, and I think people are often concerned about change, period. Yeah. I don't care what the change is, there's always people that are concerned with it. Oftentimes, when they see something actually done, whether it's whatever it is, they say, well, that's not so bad. So we're starting here. I don't know where it will go in the future. I don't know how everybody feels about it. That'll be on council in the future. But this will at least show us what it is. Maybe everybody hates it, and we don't want to go further. I don't know. But this is a place to start, in my feelings, and it's limited, so it's not going to change the whole city. With that, I'll open the public hearing. And clerk, are there cards on this item?
Yes, sir, we have about 5.
All right, I think the applicant goes first, correct?
I'm not sure who the applicant is,
Well,
I'm sorry.
this is legislative, it's not quasi-judicial.
Oh, okay, it's not necessary then, sorry.
It's Thomas, and the last name is Guiton.
Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Thomas Guyton. I live at Kennedy Point at the condominium. I'm on the condominium board. I'm the secretary on the board. I just wanted to, and I spoke to you, I believe, in August. And speaking for all the people that I've spoken to, or the majority of the people I've spoken to, it's a very positive for us. I've spoken with Mr. Oliver, and I've seen the plans, and the residents are very excited about it. What we like about it is, number one, in terms of the city, I've been here most of the night listening to you spend money and try to do it in a proper way. Here's an opportunity for you to make some money. And the tax base that you'd get from this, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, the tax base you would get from this doesn't require a lot of infrastructure like schools, and that for the population of the hotel, you would normally have to do if it were an apartment building. There is a nice breezeway between our condominium and where the structures begin. It looks like it will be a place for us a venue for us to go to actually get out and walk. And I know you're all familiar with South Titusville. There's nothing there unless you want to walk to Cumberland Farms or go across the street to the Walgreens or maybe Chalky's, but that's it. The city needs, my feeling personally is that the city needs some kind of anchor on that end of the city, and this is a venue that would have restaurants and the marina itself, which is a disaster, and Mr. Oliver's bringing that back. So it makes it a walkable venue for us residents at Kennedy Point. We have a garage on the bottom floor, which is called our ground floor, and then we have 6 floors, but the 6th floor is actually 2 floors. So when you look at it, we actually have 7 plus the ground floor. So we actually have 8 floors at the condominium. So we're not talking about a whole lot of difference. It might be a little higher because their first story may have more community space, maybe higher ceilings and so on. So we need that anchor, I think, to stimulate restaurants to come in. And if you get a nice hotel in there, you're going to also get some other nice restaurants. And I believe the hotel is going to have a restaurant as well.
You have 30
we really
seconds, sir.
we don't see a negative to it.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask him a question?
Yes, hold on one second. We have a question for you, sir. Go back to the
Tom,
microphone.
your condo is 8 floors, correct?
If you talk about, it has a ground floor where the garage
Right.
parking is and the entry, and then we have 6 floors. The top story is actually 2 stories. The
Okay.
6th floor is actually 2 stories. It's the only one in the building, the only ones that
Do
are.
the condo owners have an opinion about what it would be an appropriate height for the hotel?
No,
Okay.
no. I've heard one person say maybe it'll be too high, but that's the only negative I've heard.
Okay.
And when you look at it in terms of we're actually about 8 stories, it's not going to be that much different.
That much-
Plus, there will be some structures in
Transition.
between, I believe.
Transition.
Also, I did want to mention the manatees.
Mm-hmm.
They've planned to make sure that they remain there with the walkover. So we're excited about it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next card, please.
Richard Barnes.
Good evening.
Name and address, please, for the record, sir.
I beg your pardon?
Name and address for the record, sir.
My name is Richard Barnes. I'm also a unit owner at Kennedy Point Condominiums. We've been there approximately 2 years, moved up from Port St. John. We really, really enjoy the view. We are ecstatic and excited about the marina being restored. You ever drove down there? Obviously, there was at one time, I think, 9 or 10 boats there. They're in the process of cleaning all that up and bringing a new wall involved in there, sea breaker wall. I'm in agreement with Mr. Guyton, and as vice president on the board, we discussed it. Everybody that I've talked to is really excited about the idea of that part of Titusville evolving. I would make guess that the businesses across there and south of there, Play Linda, they would be ecstatic about it also. If you have that many people coming into a unit, they're going to spend money there. I'm sure all the businesses along that way would promote it also. And it can only enhance the beauty of that area as far as I'm concerned. You did make comment about view, what you've done to the park across from Lee and Cetus, and I really don't know the name of that park. But, I mean, we probably have more view of Titusville than, of the river than anywhere in Brevard. And so we look at it from Kennedy Point as, I think they're looking at 4 or 5 stories more than what we are now, and excuse me, I'm gonna call him Coach, because I'm an old Titusville 66, class of 66. And I mean, if you can't see the river from 2 stories, what's the difference if you can't see it from 10? The only people across the way is like Chalkies, and I don't even know what that is anymore. It used to be Johnny Weissmiller's place, and it's
Tropical Wonderland is
but
what
as
it
far,
was.
yeah,
It was called
as far as that
Tropical
is, there
Wonderland.
would be no restrictions far from anybody as far as a residential situation. So I think on the whole, and I speak for the majority of the condo, that we're very positive in that fact. We
Thank you,
appreciate
sir.
your time. Thank you.
Any questions for this gentleman? I see none, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next card, please.
Robert Kirk.
Good evening again.
Name and address
Bob
again.
Kirk, 213 Harrison Street.
Thank you, sir.
I did attend the first public hearing. There were 7 citizens that spoke that night. There wasn't a single citizen that objected to the height. I've got the minutes here.
We were here, too.
And y'all were here with us, yeah. And I was so surprised when this report came out, I couldn't believe we were at the same meeting. So where did this come from? So evidently, there's more people than the planning department that don't like heights.
It wasn't the planning department that said we don't like heights, sir.
Oh, it was,
Did the planning department say we don't like heights?
yeah.
No, sir, that was the planning and zoning.
Planning and zoning.
Yeah, P and Z.
Okay,
Right.
that's not the
I'm
planning.
sorry, not the department. No, she has been more help than anybody you got
Our
up here.
planning department gives
Yeah.
us information.
No,
They don't
I meant
make.
P and Z.
All right, sir.
Yeah, it's, I don't think there's any, no, don't shoot.
Bob, you should have seen the blood drain from her face when you said that.
No, it should. I tell you, she's been so much help with us on trying to get these things worked out.
Continue, please.
Anyway, at that meeting, there were 2 of us that asked to be in this overlay. One was my 31-acre parcel across the street from it. I asked for that to be included in the overlay. It's in the minutes. It didn't make it. I don't know why. There's nothing over there Heights going to hide except a railroad track. That side, the west side of US 1 should not have a limit. You should take the word limit off of it, as you've done on the T zoning. Because if they're going to build, according to the quality of the person that comes in. A guy with a few bucks in his pocket can't build a 20-story building or a 10-story building. It's going to take somebody with money to do that. And it'll be something nice for the community, like the resort hotel that Mr. Oliver has planned. I've looked at his plans, and I really like when you see places in there for fishing guides and boats rentals and all this kind of stuff sitting there. It's going to bring people to Titusville. And he's got a heck of a project. And he's got several projects that I've viewed with him in around the states and in the state of Florida. He does a first-class job. We need a project that isn't scared off by our zoning or height restrictions. So, and as I understood the meeting that I attended, even the unanimous on the council, that you supported no height restrictions. What happens when you couldn't build any of the buildings we have in town now with the zoning, with the paper that was presented. You can't build next to a residential.
I'm going to have to ask you to finish up your time. It went off already.
Oh, I thought it had a second one on it.
Well, it's
It says
30 seconds after
Okay.
that. I'm not sure why it's not.
Let me just say one other thing.
But I think
about
you
it.
have a question. You have a question for?
I do. Yeah,
Yes.
I believe in Mr. Kirk's request. So what I believe that I'm seeing is what we're talking about is US 1 and Highway 50 where that intersects. Whereas the east side of US 1, that the overlay would be applied or could be applied, although it's per the master plan of Antigua Bay. So there's nothing, there's nothing, no, let me rephrase that. I'm sorry, I'm a little south. So on Highway 50 going south, there is a chunk that I don't believe is unique to what we're trying to do. Meaning, I don't believe that we're just trying to do this for one parcel. I think the zoning fits for the area. Equivalently, if we are making that change and Mr. Kirk's property is on the other side consisting of 32 acres, which I think is the predominant area. If you took that purple box and moved it to the west side, I'm guessing his property would be encompassed by that as a majority. I don't see what the downside of adding that would be because we're making the change to the other side of the property. As an example, if I'm a property owner and I'm going, that guy can and I can't, I understand the concern. Where he's volunteering and saying, not only am I in agreement to what they're doing, I'm willing to put my property in it as well. I think it adds concurrency to the area. So I think that we are achieving concurrency and we're taking away the idea that this is just for one property. In contrast, we're actually doing more because the zoning of the area, I think it makes sense for that area. So I would be okay with making that adjustment if that would be, if we're able to make that adjustment with staff's input. But
Is there a question from Mr. Kirk?
would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be real well. What we've missed completely in this package is redevelopment. We didn't think about the houses that have got to be bought along there to put up a building. That's how that happens. We've been here long enough that we're not developing anymore. We're redeveloping, like the service station down there, like anything that's going to be new here. It's going to have to take something else down to do it. And just because the property is zoned residential now, it'll be rezoned, that shouldn't stop the guy from putting up his building. It is a residential use. It's just a bunch of them in one place.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk.
Any further questions?
I see no more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next card, please.
Kent Oliver.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you. I'm Kent Oliver. I'm the principal of the development known as Kennedy Point Marina and the hotel project we're discussing. I am a principal in 21 other hotels we operate and manage across the country. And I certainly concur with Mr. Kirk's comments about the fact that that whole corridor on both sides of the road, if there's no, single-family homes, I think that should be included. I think there's some areas that were not included, but from my perspective, I appreciate all of your efforts and time and the staff's time. The staff, I've had many meetings with them, my architect and the attorney, and we appreciate the fact that they have come to the table, tried to present a comprehensive plan and overlay that would benefit the city. But in that process, I think they missed a little bit as well. And so with that said, I'm leaving it back in your court. We'd love to have it passed tonight with an amendment, if possible, to include Mr. Kirk's property. And in terms of height, we did compromise with staff to 120 feet. However, that was done without thorough investigation. And when you do that, you give something up. So, you know, when you compromise, and my original plan was for 150 feet, we had more suites than we did regular units. If we compromise and come down to the 120, then we compromise the room size and also have more standard rooms as opposed to suites. So one of the things we haven't done yet is run a comprehensive analysis of the economics. And I'd like the opportunity to do that, but I'd also like to know tonight that I can move forward and start spending a lot more money with my architect and attorney for the development agreement.
All right.
Thank you.
1 second, please. I think we have a question. Member Nelson?
We like it when you spend money. Yes. Kent, if it was 12 stories, would that make it a little bit easier to work with? I mean, I'm thinking Somerset's 12 floors.
How many stories is it?
Purple Point's 12 floors.
You know, I think depending on how you define stories, because in some residential circumstances, the top condo may have a 12 to 15 foot height in that one story. On a hotel, it's very similar on the lower floors in that you might have a minimum of 12 to 15 to 18 feet, depending on the community space, the lobby, the restaurant, the bar, and the conference facility. And so you do need to, I think, segregate the difference between the commercial and then the hotel. The hotel itself, as it goes up, those floors would be 8'8", 9 feet, maybe 10. People are getting taller nowadays, and their standards have changed. You used to, if you go back to the old Holiday Inns, and you walk through them, Matt, you'd have a hard time getting through without ducking every instance. And same with the height of the doors. All the doors have moved up to like 7'4" to 7'6" now, as opposed to 6'8". So, you know, you have to consider that the times have changed, people have changed, and we have to look forward to the future. And, you know, everything changes. If it didn't, we'd all be running around in horse and buggy instead of Teslas, you know.
So, I like the horse and buggy.
Stick this up, Shay, please.
It's on my wish list.
We're taking his time.
Kent, so if we were going to say 12 floors, would you say 12 floors or X amount of feet? What would that be?
Well, I think there's an amendment for 150, and that's what I came in at. And if I can compromise below that, I certainly will. However, I think that you don't want to make a decision that could affect another project that's coming along. And I think there's some opportunities here for the city of Titusville that will help with the tax base, will help with the bringing in economic development and so on. And this is the first catalyst. So redeveloping the marina, redeveloping that particular site for a hotel. My preference would be add the amendment, put the 150, and let me do the economic analysis to work within those parameters.
Okay. Okay.
Vice Mayor?
Thank
You
you.
have a question for Mr.
But
Oliver?
yeah, I believe that, I have a question for staff, and then I'll have comments, whether those comments are now or later, sir. I would derive that to wherever you'd like me to
Just to
take
want to
them.
know if you want Mr. Oliver to stay there.
Well, possibly. So excluding, and to staff, so what I hear you saying is 150, and excluding the specific project, because we're not talking about the specific project, but we're talking about zoning that would facilitate a project.
Yes,
Yeah.
any project at
Right.
any location along that corridor and the waterfront.
Yeah, so is there, besides folks just might not like it, is there some other reason why we would not go 150? Besides just some folks go, I don't want to see it that high.
Well, in the old days, height was limited partly by how tall your hook and ladder was. And that's not true anymore
Okay.
because we have sprinklers in buildings.
Okay.
And so I think that it's strictly, at this point, really an issue of compatibility. In the instance we're talking about, we've tried to avoid overshadowing single-family houses because people don't want to feel like they live in, that kind of covered up by another building type of a thing. But I don't personally see much difference between 120 and 150 feet, except once I'm on the ground, I might feel like and this is, I think you may have experienced this, there are some communities where you feel like you've gone into a canyon and you don't feel it doesn't feel like a very comfortable space. We've tried to avoid that. And the only other thing I would tell you is that we have a definition in the code that we're adding, that's the definition of story, and there is no specific height to it. It's simply a structural definition that says it's the portion of the building between the upper surface of a floor and the upper surface of the floor above it or the roof. So whether that's 10 feet or 12 feet or 15 feet, that would still be one story.
Okay. All right, I think that's very clear, and sir, I don't know if this would be appropriate time for comment and/or
Comment from whom?
from myself.
Yeah,
Okay.
all I am concerned about is Mr. Oliver. Do you
Yeah.
want him to stay there? I
So-
suggest you stay in front because. I
Yeah,
think
so
you're-
to be fair to zoning, and here's why I'm comfortable with 150, and feel free to clean me up if this would be, if I'm out of line. I believe that Central Florida economically has changed since we've been doing this last, specifically in our tourism industry. We have gone from being tourism is important to, when you look at the Central Florida region comprehensively as an economic driver, top 15, like literally in the world, when you measure that whole thing, with our number one head honcho being tourism. So in the past, where restricting the height may have condensed the rooms that were available. So when I look at, you have more economic rooms, maybe that wouldn't hurt, but people bring Disney money here, and that ain't cheap. They are all over the port, they are all over here, and we have the Space Center, which is huge, and we've got the whole thing. And I believe that because Florida, in Central Florida specifically, has shifted its economics so heavily to tourism, and that we're winning at that, and I think that is a long-term strategy. It ain't going anywhere. So in 20 years, I think we'll be doing the same, 30 years, we'll be doing the same thing. I think zoning that would allow for higher end, more suites, more like these are the development projects that could come from the zoning are totally appropriate. Whereas if you were to ask me that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I don't know if I would have been as excited, but now I do, because I believe that that's what the state of Florida has invested in, and now we're seeing the returns. As a consequence, the city of Titusville has an opportunity to capture some of that stuff. I would be very comfortable at 150, at least measuring the economics to see if it's viable or not. I would be interested, and I would also be interested in the inclusion of the amendment for Mr. Kirk's property. So.
I'm going to have a question for you in a minute as soon as I talk to the city attorney. we have advertised this already and so forth, and they're in second reading. If we were to add the things, and you have mentioned several times that you want to get this done tonight, that's your priority.
That's a selfish reason, and it's, you know,
I'm
but
sorry?
by the same token, I think it's, when you look at the whole perspective for Titusville, it may make sense
No, we have a
to
legal problem here.
include these, you know.
We have a legal problem, though.
I-
And I'll let the attorney address that, please.
You're right, I have a couple things that I think council should consider. With regard to comments from the vice mayor about looking at economics at 150 feet, be aware, once you create an ordinance allowing height, let's say of 150 feet on properties, it's difficult to start going in the opposite direction later, because now you have created those expectations and development rights on properties. There's a thing called Burt Harris, and as soon as you turn around and you want to start taking height away from those properties later, you're going to get claims, because you've created those expectations on these properties now and development rights to go to 150 feet. So be very careful when you start going high. Be sure that's what you want to do. With regard to the second issue, as the mayor pointed out, and I believe Ms. Pizaka can confirm, certain notices went out when we prepared this ordinance, and I believe notices went to adjacent property owners based on the specific overlay area, as you saw on the map. So in my opinion, it would not be proper now to start adding properties to that specific overlay area that were not noticed, that P&Z did not evaluate. So if it's your intention to do that, my advice is you send it back. You provide notice to those adjacent properties, owners of properties that you want to include. Send it back to P&Z, provide that notice, and have it come back to you. Or you move forward as presented tonight and then give direction to staff to look at other areas and then come back to you with another ordinance.
It would in effect delay you because we do not have a second meeting in December. So you're talking probably 3 months at minimally.
So my preference then would be to pass it as is, but give the staff the direction to look at the rest of Titusville so that you're not losing out. Because I think it's very important that your waterfront, your commercial districts, and the activity that's happening in this part of the country right now with hospitality, with Blue Origin, SpaceX, the fact that the government is starting back with NASA and encouraging the business in this direction, I think you really miss out on a big opportunity to enhance your city and your tax base and your constituents by limiting those opportunities.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Are there other cards, clerk?
Yes, sir, we have two more. Rodney Honeycutt.
Good evening, Rodney Honeycutt, 3700 South Washington Avenue. Thank you very much for considering this ordinance to allow additional height in certain areas. It is restricted to certain areas, and as I understand from the city attorney, that without re-advertising, it would be in those areas. I appreciate the fact that at the first reading, there was some ideas that we had about how you count the floors and the commercial and the lower floor, and staff addressed those comments, and that's included in this. And I appreciate that. I do think that there's room to add more height to the ordinance without going to another hearing. The attorney could address that. I do support this, and I appreciate you guys supporting it also.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? I don't see any.
Thank you.
Next card, please.
The last card is Philip Knorr.
Good evening, sir. Name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Philip Knorr. My business address is 1795 West Nassau Boulevard in Melbourne, Florida. First of all, I know it's getting late, and I know you all like to leave. I'll try to be as brief as I can. I want to thank you for your looking forward, and that's what I want to talk just very briefly about, looking forward. I think we can all agree that this is an exciting project. Mr. Oliver has worked a long time in trying to get it. I'm pretty sure he's sick and tired of seeing me, and he would like to let me to go on to work on some other files rather than his, and believe it or not, I'm trying to do it. Mr. Honeycutt was just up here, and he was going to ask for an opinion from your city attorney on the issue of whether or not we can address height, i.e. going from 120 to 150 tonight without the without having to re-advertise that. I know you've already ruled on the issue as to other properties, but if we could get your opinion on that, that would, if we could go to 150 tonight, that might alter some of the suggestions I'm going to make.
Mr. City Attorney, would you please address that?
You have to re-advertise when the title, what you're doing would make the title misleading. I believe the title's broad enough that they understand you're going to 120 feet. 150 feet, in my opinion, isn't necessarily misleading. It is additional height. Given the fact that right now it's written it's 10 stories or 120 feet, whichever's higher. I think we've heard 10 stories is likely to be more than 120 feet. I think I'm not sure how you want to rewrite that. I mean, currently now they can go up higher than 120 feet as written, based on 10 stories.
To what height?
It's on whatever 10 stories will bear.
But they have to be 10 stories, though.
Right.
Correct, which could be more than 120 feet.
My suggestion.
Please, you're excited.
Oh, I'm sorry. My suggestion is that if you wanted to go to 150 feet, then I would take out the number of stories, and I would simply say that the maximum is 150 feet.
Can we work on that tonight, though, on that basis?
I believe you could.
Okay, well, there's your answer.
Yeah. With that answer, and I thank you, I know we're putting you on the spot without advance notice. I would respectfully ask that we get an approval tonight, if you're all willing to approve it, at 150 feet, and that the idea of adding the other parcels would come behind that. That way, that gives Mr. Oliver the go-ahead to turn the architects and the engineers loose to get the thing designed. We're pretty sure we can do it at 150 feet. We're pressing it at 120 feet, and we're afraid that there are going to be surprises that we were going to have to come back to you with anyway. So if we could get to 150 feet tonight, knowing that not in any way deserting our good friend, Mr. Kirk.
I agree with the gentleman. Go ahead and approve that, get him started.
Okay.
We can come back in December. Okay.
And with that, I'm going to stop unless you all have any questions for me.
Any questions? I see, who we got up there? Member Stoke, was that you? Oh, City Attorney, I'm sorry.
Right. Again, I would just caution, as reference, when you go 150 feet, this is not, you're not drafting this ordinance for a specific project you like. This will apply regardless this project ever happens or doesn't happen. And you will be, I'll say stuck, you will have an ordinance allowing 150 feet for whatever project decides to come.
In specific areas, though.
That's correct, in whatever area this applies to.
Which is designated within the overlay.
In the overlay area as it's on the map.
It's very limited at this point.
Correct. I just want to point out, and again, back to the fact that once you've allowed the 150 feet, it's going to be very difficult to go lower in the future because you've created those development rights at 150 feet. So if council decides, whoa, that was a little too high, you're going to have, it's going to be more difficult to then scale back and say we should have kept it at 120, 130, because now there's some value to now going to 150 feet that you have to realize is going to be difficult to take away later.
I have another thought. There is a possibility that you could always say at a certain height it is permitted, and above that height, it would be a conditional use permit. So now, and I don't want to make this about a specific item, but I will tell you that in master plans with development agreements, we have seen people get additional height because they were allowed to give additional rationale for waivers. We have seen conditional use permits get incorporated into development agreements at the same time, so it's a seamless for the applicant as well as council. So if a concern is that you feel comfortable in one area with 150 feet, you don't necessarily feel that, or you're a little bit uncertain because of the size of this, you could do that. I believe that the Kennedy Point project will have a development agreement anyway. And so there is a mechanism that you could address perhaps certain projects who have development agreements and you know a lot of specifics about them, and other projects where it's just general and you don't have the opportunity, for instance, because you don't see site plans, that you could then feel a little more comfortable perhaps in making them go through a different process.
But basically, it would still be limited at 150, even if you added a conditional, right? The conditional would allow it to go further.
What I'm suggesting is, and I'm making these numbers up, if you're comfortable with 100 or 120 feet, then say that that's the permitted, and above that would require a conditional use permit, a master plan, a development agreement, whatever mechanism.
But they couldn't, we can't do it with this project tonight because they're interested in getting it done.
Well, this project has to come back for a development agreement anyway. I think what they're trying to know is how they can do their engineering. So yes, that would not be as 100% assured as it would be had you if you just take the ordinance and make it to 150 feet. You're right about that.
I want to make sure, is that, what's your view of doing that? Could we do that? I'm not even sure how we would do that, so can you comment on this?
Going from what is perceived to be a 120-foot ordinance to tonight, almost adding, what's that, 20% more. Technically, could you do it?
Add an additional situation that she described.
Well, right, two things. One, and you asked about going to the 150. I can't guarantee you that wouldn't be a challenge, that people say, hey, I would have come to the meeting if I knew you were going to go to 150 feet. That's outrageous. I thought it was 120 feet. I can't guarantee you that people now are going to say, you pulled one on us. It's another 30 feet, and we would have been there. So you will be subject to that challenge. So if you ask me, technically, could you do it? I don't think it's misleading because you talked about 10 stories, 120, whatever's higher within that realm. But I can't guarantee you're not going to have individuals upset that they weren't aware that you were going to do that tonight and raise that issue. Likewise, if you do 150 and you say we're going to make it a CUP, well, that wasn't addressed either. So now the more things you add to an ordinance that wasn't advertised or wasn't put out to the public, you are susceptible to challenge.
But
that's the best way I can.
Understood, and I certainly agree with what you're saying. But it appears to me there's a thought that we can make a CUP tonight, and I don't think that's not possible.
No. If you're going to add a process, same thing. I would say send it back, transparency, let the public understand what you're doing, see if there's comments, send it back to P&C.
Council still may want to
in doing what was advertised.
Council still may want to go to 150. I'm just saying you do the next one, you're pushing it.
If it makes any difference to you, I'm willing to commit tonight to tell you there will be a binding development agreement like staff. We've already started talking about it, and that's something that we will go on the record as saying there will be such a document prepared, because there are going to be a lot of neat things that are going to be in that document. I think most of you are going to be happy with anyway. So, okay. So if that helps any,
I'm not sure it does, sir, frankly, okay. But thank you.
Right.
Mr. Oliver, could you come back up, please?
Well, because again, remember, buying development agreements for his project, this ordinance is not project specific, so that doesn't, I'd be really careful in going with what you've advertised and has been reviewed.
At 120, is that what you're saying? Well, they may be willing to take the chance, they may not. I mean, they're.
Counsel,
and
I just wanna let you
it's
know-
not- I know it's not, it's property, I mean, project-specific, but he has a problem, and he's probably, and council would like to assist him, but we don't want to mess up your plans either. So it's kind of up to you. Do you want to, would you have a problem if council decided they went to 150, knowing what the city attorney just said, that it could be challenged and may delay your project?
Well, we do have to do a development agreement in the process as well. If the council chooses to go to the 150, I would be in favor of that 100%, because that's what I came in initially with.
You understand you're taking a risk on it, though.
I understand that. I think I'm willing to take that risk. So far, you have not had any opposition that I'm aware of.
But, and maybe we'll have none, but we can't guarantee
And
it.
maybe you'll have none, and I think there's some absolute benefit.
You heard the
to this.
attorney, though, he said we can't guarantee it.
I understand that, but then we have to deal with that problem when it
I'm
pops
just
up, if it
presenting,
pops up.
I'm just presenting the situation to you so you're very clear on it. And from there, the decision is yours, and what I hear you just say was that you would like to take that chance. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's all
Okay,
I wanted
thank
to know. Clerk, do we have other cards on this? Oh, wait, we have, let's go to the other cards first, all right? Before we have no more? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Now we can have whatever discussion you want to, and understand, this is the time for that, actually.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I have Member Diesel.
Well, through the last 5 minutes of discussion, I think the angle I was going to take has changed about 3 times, but
Believe me, I understand.
are we looking to do the 150-foot, an ordinance of 150 feet for all the areas marked as high-rise, so to speak?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that where we were going with that?
Yes.
And that's what you said, that was your warning, that if we do that, it's going to, someone else can come along and go 150 feet.
Correct. Correct. It would apply to all properties in the overlay on the map. And if, I would advise if council is inclined to go in that direction, I don't know the timelines, but, you know, you do have one more meeting in December. I don't know if there's P and Z in December. But an opportunity to put the public on notice, you might want to go to 150. If that's really the direction you want to go, and put it back out there at 150.
All right, and then it was asked by the attorney to you, city attorney, if we could tonight get us to 150 feet, and you said you thought we could do that without the deception problem.
Well, I thought technically, the courts have said, if your title is broad enough that what you're doing is not misleading, it's defendable. The question is, now we're talking is 120 versus 150. You know, that's not black and white. 25% addition. Is someone going to view that? I can't answer that question. I can just tell you that it could, because it's 10 stories or 120 feet, whatever's higher, the public's on notice that it's likely to be more than 120 feet. Is 150 substantially more to the point that someone would deem that misleading? I can't tell you that it wouldn't be challenged. So if council's inclined to go to that direction, my advice would be tell them you're considering that. You could send it back for additional comment, bring it back at your next meeting. That's just my advice.
All right, so let's just say I'm wanting to go to 150 feet tonight. That's not a concern.
It is a concern.
All right, well, then let me digress to that thought I had 8 minutes ago. Mr. Kirk actually said, correctly so, we're not, if we're concerned about the 150 feet buildings in the areas that those would then be allowed, I'm not very concerned about that because you're going to have some pretty deep pockets to do it. And they're going to be some pretty big projects. And I would just say by coincidence, Florida Today flashed one of their little news briefs that the Space Center, at least for this year, had passed Disney World as far as people coming over here. That's shocking to me, and I think I read that right. But per Florida Today, that says an awful lot, and it just adds to the not just the condo, hotel, but the resort aspect of the things that are coming. It would draw people in that we really don't have going on right now. So it's a big deal. I'm kind of off center there because I know we're talking about the 150 feet. But it is also a big deal to get that done. And I know we talked about the CUP perhaps with the Harley-Davidson flagpole. And I know that's, again, it's thinking outside the box. But obviously, I think everything we're doing up here right now, at least what I'm doing, and I think we're all doing, is how to get this done tonight.
I would say you're absolutely right. That's why I've been probing these questions. But well, there is no answer. I think that's exactly what the attorney has told us. Here's the problem. He can't guarantee it. Will it be challenged? It very well could be. But he can't say it will be, but he can't say it won't be. So the gentleman out there, it's his risk at this point because he wants to get it done quickly. Time is money, and I understand. But he is also taking a risk on it. Now, he said he's willing to do that. Then we have the issue of this is not only on this property, but any other property, which at this point is limited, that comes under the same rulings. And it's not everywhere. So we'd have to make a lot of changes to have it anywhere else but these two places that are on here. So that's it in a nutshell. It's not an easy answer. So that's what we got to deal with. But you already spoke, Vice Mayor, right? Yes. I forgot to take it off.
No, I have not.
Oh, you haven't? I'm sorry. I thought you did. Go right ahead.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Thank you. I would move to approve ordinance number 50-2018.
Well, hold it until we get through with other people speaking, if you don't
Okay.
mind. You'll be able to make the thing. Member
Now
Sto-
it's me. Me was 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay. Attorney speak, Member Diesel.
See, we're trying to get
There
you
are
on
always
that.
people who will sue for any reason in the world. You can never stop people from coming up with some really crazy ideas about what they're going to sue people for. Looking at the notice, yeah, there's always that possibility, and I would say this to Mr. Oliver, the chances are, I would say, slim. So I would prefer to go ahead with the ordinance tonight.
I'm curious, what do you base that on?
Do you really want me to tell you?
Coin flip or what?
This is absolutely embarrassing. I did a search warrant for pornography.
No, I'm saying that I know anybody can, I'm talking
yeah.
about this case specific, not all of anything else.
Because,
And you turned
look,
red, beet
I've
red.
turned beet red. The guy sued me because he wanted his porn
No,
back.
no, let's not go into those things.
I mean,
No,
I'm serious.
I'm talking about
I'm serious.
this case specific. You said
This
it's
case
slim,
specific.
choice is slim.
That's true. I didn't have it, just say that. Because it is saying that what we're discussing is Chapter 29, Special Districts and Overlays, creating a height overlay section. So it is out there. That is the notice that went out. It's relatively clear, so there really isn't, there's always an argument, but the chances are, you know, of somebody coming forward would not be huge.
Okay. And I appreciate your opinion, particularly since you're an attorney. So it had
You
nothing
made me
to...
turn red.
Yeah, it's kind of cute, I think.
No.
Members,
All
anything
things.
else?
No,
I had
I'm not
no
adding-
knowledge of what you
I'm
were
not
talking
adding
about.
it.
Member Stokel, please.
Yeah.
Get us out of
Yes,
this,
I am
please.
trying. Okay. Peggy, my questions are for you. If we were to approve it, if you can just clarify this for me, if we were to approve it as written, with their development plan and agreement, would they be allowed to potentially go above the 120 feet requirement, or maximum?
Well, right now it's written as it may be 10 stories or 120 feet, whichever is greater. Depending on the height of their stories, they may be able to get more than 120 feet, but I'm not sure that that addresses the concerns of Mr. Oliver, because he was talking about square footage of the suites rather than necessarily the height of the ceiling.
So he would not be able to go to potentially 150 feet, 12 stories, for instance?
Right,
with
because
his
it would be,
agreement.
well, he could get 10 stories, or up to 120 feet, whichever is greater. So, but as I understand it, the reason that he wants to go to 150 feet is so that he has more square footage for the size of his rooms.
Okay.
Not necessarily higher ceilings, although I believe in the common area there would be higher ceilings.
Okay, and then when creating this overlay, do you potentially see any concerns with some of the things you brought up, like shade or abutting properties, if we were to go to 150 feet with this current overlay presented?
We tried to put this in areas where we did not see immediate issues of single-family abutting these properties, which is really why these areas were chosen. So that was the attempt.
Okay. That answers. And then I guess, so then my comments would be, because of the wording in this, which Peggy just mentioned, to me, it already allows for flexibility to go to 150 feet if someone were to have 10 stories still that just had very high ceilings. They could, in theory.
But he'd have to build it that way.
Correct, but it's allowed as this is written and as this kind of went out already. So I would be comfortable doing that. I'd be comfortable doing that with this overlay moving forward. I would like to see kind of, as we look into opening this up to more properties and places, to be more intentional, to see, is 150 a good threshold for that area? Should it be 120 for this? I feel comfortable.
Well, I would
That's
ask
my
Mr.
opinion.
Oliver to come back up. We're searching here. You heard what Councilmember Stokel said. The problem I see, as I said, is that you would have to build those stories higher. Is that possible for you to do, to create the same number of stories but go to 150 feet? Is that an advantage to you, or does that?
Well, the only advantage it has is on the lower floor of the commercial space, because the hotel tower, those rooms would typically have maybe a 10-foot ceiling. And so.
So does it serve your purpose in any way?
Maybe let me clarify mine. I'm okay with changing it just to taking out the 10 stories and putting 120 feet or 150 feet, just leaving it like that. That's what I was trying to say. That makes sense. Taking out the 10 stories and just saying up to 150 feet.
Oh.
That was my recommendation, yes.
So you're taking out
That's what
the
I
stuff.
thought.
Yes, yes.
That's what I thought. I
Just
heard.
wanted to clarify that.
I misunderstood her. I thought
Okay.
she was saying make the stories.
No.
I
That
misunderstood.
was my rationale for why I feel like legally we would be okay and protected, because as this is written, it in theory could go up to 150 feet. Should somebody come in and do that, I don't think that's what he's wanting to do.
Well,
But that was my rationale for,
let me ask the city attorney, does that put Mr. Oliver in further jeopardy as far as the chances? I understand you can't guarantee, but.
No, I would have the same comments. It's not any different,
yeah.
in my opinion, to say 10 stories or 150 feet, or just say 150 feet with a cap. That's not different.
As far as the risk to Mr. Oliver
Right,
being challenged?
My comments would be the same based on.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
No, I'm looking at you to make sure that we don't create a Frankenstein for you in some way, and it doesn't sound like it now.
I don't think it creates much of a conflict.
Okay.
You know, to the extent that we haven't had any opposition, And we've advertised, we've set out a plan.
Mr. Oliver, I know this town a little better than you. They were very, very opposed to anything over 35 foot.
Well,
Fortunately, that,
yes, P and Z was.
yeah, no, well, the community came out with it. Fortunately, it did not pass, so it wasn't a majority. But they wanted to limit everything in the town to 35 foot, in which case we couldn't even have that movie theater that just came in, because that's well over that.
Right.
So what I'm saying is I wouldn't make any assumptions
Yeah,
that people
Your Honor,
won't show up.
how many years ago was that?
Oh, gee, I don't know, 10 years? Maybe a little bit over.
Yeah, a lot of things have changed in 10 years. So.
It's your project, sir.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you that there's
and I
a
certainly-
potential there. I don't want you to come back and say you didn't tell me that. We didn't realize that would happen.
Yeah, and I
I'm
certainly
not saying it
appreciate
would,
that.
I'm just saying it could.
Yeah,
So-
I certainly appreciate.
Well, I'm not trying to
comments on
fight you, believe me. I just don't want to put you in a position that all of a sudden you can't do what you want
Right.
and in the time you want. Go ahead.
Let's see if the chair would entertain a motion at this time.
Sure.
Sure.
I see no other lights, nobody else. Thank you,
Any
sir.
other questions? Thanks.
What did he say?
Any other questions?
No.
So,
Not yet.
I'd move to approve ordinance number 50-2018 with the amendment of going to from 120 to 150 feet maximum, removing the 10-story limitation, and provide provision to staff to separately come back with an adjustment to the overlay that would be inclusive of the property to the west side of US 1, otherwise known as Mr. Kirk's property.
Mr. Kirk said he was willing to wait in order not to jeopardize. I would ask you to
I'm
consider that.
happy to withdraw that amendment, and we'll just take care of the ordinance right now.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from anyone? Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
Member Stokel? Yes. Member Diesel?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Go forth and build, sir.
Mayor, one comment, based on the motion I heard, if I could have council, what I heard is you want to take a look at expanding the actual overlay that was just passed. So would you like staff to proceed with that? If I could get a consensus on that, we can get that ball rolling.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
Everybody okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, 9B, sir.
9B is ordinance number 51, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 28 zoning, Sections 28-342 accessory use table and 28-353 attached screen porch to designate attached screen porches as a permitted accessory use in specified zoning classifications, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this action 6-0. During a recent code update, screen porches were incorrectly classified as a limited accessory use in residential zoning districts. The proposed ordinance corrects this error by classifying screen porches as a permitted accessory use. This is your second reading and final public hearing of ordinance number 51, 2018.
Staff, do you have any presentation on this or comments? Council, do you have any questions of staff? I see no lights. I'll open the public hearing. Are there any cards on this, clerk?
No, sir.
I'll close the public hearing. We don't have anybody that spoke, so what's your pleasure?
Motion to approve ordinance number 51-2018 relating to screen porches.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say...
Roll call, sir.
Oh, roll call. Yes, sir. Roll call.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
Member Stokel? Yes. Member Diesel?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Next item, sir.
Next item is 9C, ordinance number 52, 2018, An ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by establishing a time frame for storage of materials and equipment on site prior to commencement of permitted land development activities, by amending Chapter 30 Development Standards, specifically amending Sections 3021 General Provisions and 3083 Prohibition, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this action 6-0. The code does not currently limit the storage of materials and equipment on a site prior to the commencement of permitted development activity. With the recent increase in development, it's become apparent that the regulations are needed to reduce safety and visual impacts related to construction material and equipment being stored on site. The proposed ordinance would permit storage of material and equipment for no longer than 30 days prior to the commencement of permitted activity. This is your second reading and final public hearing of Ordinance 52-2018.
Ms. Pusaka? Nothing. Any questions of staff, council? I see none. I'll open the public hearing. Clerk, are there any cards?
No, sir.
I'll close the public hearing. Council discussion. I see none. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve ordinance number 52-2018, storage of materials.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
Member Stokel? Yes. Member Diesel?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is ordinance number 53, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 28 zoning, Sections 28307, multifamily high-density residential R3, and Section 3151, projections, fences, and walls, to permit specific structures to project into required principal structure setbacks, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that the City Council table this ordinance to allow time for further staff analysis by 6-0. Based upon a request from several citizens, Council approved advisability to develop an ordinance that would permit certain structures to project into setbacks in the R3 zoning district. The proposed ordinance would permit elevated decks and open porches of townhouses within the R3 zoning district to project into the rear yard setbacks, which would butt the major water bodies or a common area. Open stairs, fire escapes, and chimneys on townhouses may project no more than 4 feet into the required setback of the rear yard setback. This is your second reading and final public hearing of ordinance number 53, 2018, and staff is available. I think you have some updates on this to provide to council before you open your hearing, sir.
I see your light, but... Go ahead. Okay. Ms. Pusaka, please.
There were several concerns expressed by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and one of them was how the current language in the code interacts with the required shoreline protection setback. So I have provided you with language that clearly identifies that any projection into the setback of R3, which happens to be 25 feet from the property line, could not extend into the shoreline protection setback, which is 20 feet. So there's a difference there between, assuming that the property line goes all the way to the river, there's a difference of 5 feet. And this would clearly designate that these balconies would not extend into the shoreline protection buffer. So that language is shown in front of you. The other question that was asked by Planning and Zoning is how many properties does this affect? You have information showing you that there are 2 townhome developments zoned R3, which abut either South Lake or the Indian River Lagoon. Those are identified. We have also identified that there are several other R3 properties, but there are no vacant R3 properties. And the other R3s are not townhomes. So basically what we're talking about is a limited impact to this particular development as it's written.
Council, do you have questions for staff? Ms. Pusaka? I see no questions. I'll open the public hearing. Clerk, are there cards?
Yes, sir. We have 3 cards.
All right. Call the
Robin
cards, please.
Taylor.
Good evening. My name is Robin Taylor. I live at 4997 River Edge Drive, and this is directly affecting my property as well as several represented here tonight. We would add more, but with the extensive agenda, it's hard to give them a time to show up. But anyway, I'd like to clarify my last presentation that I gave you at the first reading. But I had shown you this picture, I'll give this to you, that shows the conformity that we're trying to accomplish in our complex. This particular end unit was extended, but it does come into conformity with the with our plans. Now, there's another building that was extended, and I would like to mention that this one only has about a 10-foot setback from the median, but it was permitted and allowed to be able to do this. So, and you can see that we have 2 that are extended, and they have come into conformity again. We do have permission from the city of Titusville. This was given by Richard Willis, showing that we can enclose the original balconies, which is an 8-foot set extension. So all the balconies are permitted to enclose their current balconies. But then you are taking away the conformity if they cannot have the new balconies, which would conform to our plan, as well as safety issues, because, you know, your second and third floor, and you do not want to be trapped should there be fire, because our second and third floors are frame. First floor is concrete block. The kitchen is at the bottom of the steps going to the third floor, which would trap the person on the third floor, so we would need that balcony. And we would like I don't know if you can add this to the ordinance, but we would like to make that a maximum of 8 feet for the new balconies, and I think that would clarify some of the issues that planning and zoning had as well. So this letter is the original letter from the city. Allowing us to enclose the balconies. This is I did not present this last time. This is a survey of the entire property, a plat map. And these are the ones in blue are the ones that have already extended either the third floor or the second floor and closing their balconies. And the pink is actually ones that have added new balconies or extended their current balconies. And you can see the shoreline here, this blue. Mine's the shortest one at this time that would be affected, and I have 40 feet from my current balcony to the water line, so that would not affect the shoreline.
You need additional time, ma'am? I can only ask. Counsel, how do you feel? 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
I'm actually pretty much finished.
1 minute.
1 minute, I make that motion.
You can see
Wait,
where
ma'am.
you
We
have
to- we
plenty of footage.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry?
I have to get a vote.
I'm sorry.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Pass unanimously. Go ahead.
You can see, I have circled my particular unit. You can see that the property gradually gets wider as it goes down. And it shows that I have currently a second floor balcony. I do not have a third floor, which the third floor balcony will not extend beyond what the second floor balcony is. So it's really just going to be coming back into conformity. I have a whole bunch of examples, but for lack of time, this is another unit that does not have a second or third floor balcony. They're enclosed, and their steps currently are just going right into the sliding glass doors. So this would greatly advantage them to come back into conformity. But if you look at the one with mine, you can see that there are 3 units that do not have a third floor balcony. I believe that's it. I'll just hand you these. And shows what I have and what's proposed. And I'm done.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, next card, please.
Tammy Hermanson, and then Chuck Hermanson.
Name and address, please.
Tammy Hermanson, 4969 River Edge Drive.
And
this-
Chuck Hermanson.
And this is my husband.
Okay.
Our unit is the one that has the stairs coming straight out. We purchased it this way. City of Titusville did permit this build-out. Our real estate agent told us that you should have no problem getting a deck put on your unit. We have applied for a permit to have the deck put on, third floor and second floor, and it has been denied. As far as we were concerned, that's where we stopped, and have been trying to get this fixed, because we do have a child, she's 15, she knows how to come out of a door, but there is no landing to this. I do realize that I probably should have brought that up with my real estate agent and spoken to the previous owners of why that was not done, why there was no landing put on there when they decided to bump those the top and bottom floors out. And we're just here to say that we do approve what's being asked for. We are
Any questions from council? I see no questions.
Sir.
I see no questions if you'd like to sit down.
Okay.
Why shed some light on why it wasn't approved, or can it be approved, or is that what they're asking for? I'm not even sure.
There are a number of issues in this development. In some cases, the people who have put, they have extended these without a permit. I promise you that those stairs do not meet code because you have to have a landing, which the lady explained is not there. We've had a number of people who exceed the lot coverage on the property, as well as setbacks, as well as putting, they said that they were just putting in a first floor with a roof, and then pretty soon we ended up with a room with a roof. And I know this has been very hard, but a screen room is looked at differently, whether it has a roof or whether it's just a screen under the building code. And part of it is an accessory structure, and part of it is if it has a roof, it's part of the principal structure, and those setbacks are different. So this has been, I believe, is the third time that we have addressed changing the code for Hidden Cove. Part of what could happen here is that the individuals could come and ask for variances. That has turned into, as you know, some people can show a hardship and other people don't, so there's some uncertainty there. And that's why they've requested this. But I cannot tell you that this will address every single person's issue. I don't have surveys to show every single person's issue. This is one way that you can give people an opportunity to ask. There are people, some people, I'm guessing, that are already so far over the line that there's not much that we can do to help them with this ordinance.
Well, frankly, up to this last point, I really don't have a problem with it myself. Okay. I think most of it is coming back into some conformity. It's limited to that property. The last one's, I think, over the edge, though, personally, with and they want another one, another stairs going up and so forth. I don't see how that fits anything that's going on there. I'm sorry, but.
I don't know the specifics of that, and they may indeed be able.
Well, they just showed a picture.
Oh, I
right?
saw the picture.
Yeah.
And they may indeed be able to either get a landing or extend that based on how far they are from the setback. I just don't know the specifics of that.
But there, as far as getting a permit for it, you will have to go through it, and if you can't get it, you can go for a variance on it. I'm not going to comment on the likelihood or not, but that's the process of it. The rest of it, I don't have an issue with.
I don't believe, honestly, that there is anything else we can do to this code to assist the people in Hidden Cove. We've now, as I said, this is our third time that we've tried to amend this.
I was here for all of them.
And now we have basically said you can go into the setback to the point where you reach the shoreline protection buffer. So I'm afraid that anybody who can't get this issue resolved under this code will have to seek a variance.
I agree with you, ma'am. Council, any questions of staff? Okay, we still have, we have any more cards on it? No, sir. Okay, I'll close the public hearing then. Well, go ahead. I've already discussed my feelings on it, so. Council, any discussion? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Move to approve ordinance number 53-2018, permitting projections into setbacks in the multifamily, high-density residential zoning district.
Second.
Does that,
Could I have a question? Is this
Yes.
the language I've provided to you this evening to clarify that the shoreline?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I have a question. Does that include the last request? The stairs and the,
They're allowed to have 4 feet into the required side or rear setback with their, what do you call it? Stairs. Because we need that, yeah, this would allow that as well.
okay, as far as anything past that, you're going to have to get a permit on it. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Thanks. Roll call vote, please.
Member Stokel? Yes. Member Diesel?
Yes.
Member Nelson? Yes. Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
God bless. We have no ordinances, first reading, no old business, new business. City Manager.
On 30 July 2018, the Neighborhood Services Department issued a bid seeking construction services of a qualified residential home builder to construct a final home in Inspiration Village. Through the Demand Star bid system, over 1,300 potential bidders were notified. On 1 October 2018, the city received 2 bids, one from Smith Development and Construction Incorporated in the amount of $138,820, and Parkett Construction in the amount of $134,705. After careful review and consideration of the bids received in accordance with the notice to bidders, including its specifications, bid submittal requirements, and the experience and qualification of the bidders, the Neighborhood Services Director recommended the award of the contract to the qualified lowest bid contractor, which was Smith Development and Construction Incorporated of Merritt Island in the amount of $138,820. It should be noted that this recommendation is consistent with HUD procurement guidelines, which include provisions for grantees to make awards only to responsible contractors possessing the ability to perform successfully under the terms and conditions of the proposed procurement. After the evaluation of the bids, the city announced its intent to recommend the award to the bid number 18B034 to Smith Development Construction Incorporated, and subsequently the city received a letter from Parkett Construction Company dated 16 October 2018, giving the city notice of its intent to formally protest the recommended award of the bid to Smith Development Construction Company. Subsequently, on 26 October 2018, the city received a second letter dated 25 October 2018 from Parkett Construction detailing the elements of the protest. A copy of that bid protest is part of your packet. In accordance with city policy, the city purchasing and contracting administrator will gather as evidence, discern the facts, and make recommendations to the city manager. The city manager will present his recommendations to the governing body that will make a final decision on this matter. The investigation concluded that the city's purchasing and contracting administrator pursuant to Parkett Construction's protest found, number one, that the additional information requested by the city from the bidders regarding their prior experience and workload is in compliance with the bid document issued by the city for construction of a single-family home in Inspiration Village, and pertinent to determine that the intended award of the bid is being made to the firm with the experience to build a single-family homes. Parkett Construction Incorporated failed to provide the city any evidence documenting that they had constructed any new single-family homes, first when requested by Neighborhood Services, and second, after its protest letter of 25 October 2018. Number three, Smith Development has constructed 6 single-family homes in the past 2 years, and staff determined that Smith Development is the lowest qualified bidder for this project. Number four, there's no basis to change the intended recommendation of the award of the bid to Smith Development as a result of the protest letter submitted by Parkett Construction Incorporated. As city manager, I have carefully reviewed the facts and recommendations submitted by the purchasing and contracting administrator. It is my recommendation that the facts presented do not warrant honoring Parkett's bid protest. Accordingly, I recommend denial of Parkett Construction's bid protest.
Thank you. City staff, any comments you'd like to make at this point?
I'm just here to answer questions if you have any.
Very good, thank you. Council, do you have any questions at this point? All right, I'll open the public hearing. Do we have any cards on this?
We have one card. It's David Park.
If you'd like to come up, sir.
Good evening. My name is David Park. I'm the owner of Parkett Construction. My address is 1982 Sorrento Circle, West Melbourne, Florida. I apologize for being a little tired and lethargic. I was pouring concrete at around 7 o'clock this morning, and I'm going to be pouring it at 7:30 tomorrow morning. I do want I know I have a limited amount of time. I'm not sure exactly how much that is, but
3 minutes, sir.
3 minutes? Okay. The point of me being here is...
I want to make sure you can ask for additional time if you need it.
Okay, fair enough. Depending on the City Council's decision, I will be proceeding with a lawsuit against the City of Titusville on this issue. A little bit about my background. I actually am an engineer and a certified general contractor. I actually went to engineering school at Florida Tech on a full ride scholarship, graduated in 1994, went to work for a City of Titusville contractor for 11 years. At the time, becoming a CGC under the criteria for what was required under the Florida statutes was actually harder than becoming a PE, which I also am, in that you had to have 10 years of experience working for another CGC, which I did, working for a Titusville contractor before you were eligible to even sit for the Certified General Contractor's exam, which I passed. In the case of a PE exam, you actually only had to work in conjunction with another professional engineer for 3 years before sitting for the PE exam. I want to start by saying I am very familiar. I deal with a lot of attorneys. I deal with a lot of engineers. I do a lot of consulting for claims and various items. We were the low bidder. I realize that is not an end-all, be-all, by $4,032.70. I'm a fully qualified and capable CGC firm. I've been in this business since 1994. Personally, I've managed over $140 million worth of work. And currently, I have different types of consulting and general construction projects: engineering, construction management, scheduling management, claims management, civil, structural, non-structural, commercial, residential. And some of my clients have included Walt Disney World, Florida Department of Transportation, NASA, Army Corps of Engineers, CSX Railroad, Greater Orlando Aviation Authority, Sanford Airport Authority, Canaveral Port Authority, Brevard, Volusia, Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and Dade counties, and numerous other Florida municipalities. Since opening my business in 2005, I have never failed to complete a project adequately in what is now, my math is, because I'm tired actually, basically 13 years. That would include 3 projects that I did for the city of Titusville, 2 of which through the Neighborhood Services Department. And 1, actually, I believe it was to do some flooring for a lab in a city of Titusville project. Currently, while I have no single-family residence experience of late, I am in an advisory capacity for construction management on an 18-story high-rise down in Miami for a contractor based out of New Orleans that has to be done by the end of...
Would you like additional time, sir?
Yes, sir, I would.
How much would you like?
2 or 3 minutes, maybe?
Mayor, I would, it's his protest. I would give him as much time as he feels necessary
3
to present
minutes
his
out
case.
I have an outline. I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible.
You have up, let me ask council, three minutes, if somebody would like to make that.
I think because this is a protest, that we'll just not run the clock to
Oh,
allow him
okay.
time to
Oh, I'm sorry. I
to,
didn't understand
present.
what you said.
I'll just tick through my outline as quickly
Go
as
right ahead.
possible so I don't waste anybody's time any more than I have to. Basically, our current workload, I think at the time I wrote one of my protest letters, I have 8 clients that are in a consultant capacity. I have 3 construction projects currently. Several of them I'm hired by an attorney to opine on different things. I realize, having gone through dealing with a lot of construction litigation attorneys over the years since 1994, that the city has arguably, any government agency, not just the city, has a ton of latitude in terms of awarding a contract. That's not the point that I would litigate. The point that I would litigate is through the process of me submitting my bid. I submitted my bid, I submitted everything that was required in the base bid contract documents. I was asked subsequently by the Neighborhood Services Department to consider withdrawing my bid. There was originally 3 different contractors that actually attended the mandatory bid meeting. One contractor was kicked out at some point along the line because he got the first addendum, but he didn't get the second addendum, and he didn't ultimately submit a bid. I heard, since I've been here a little bit early.
Sir, let's stick to what you're doing.
That is part of my protest, because there are actually going to be 2 points that I'm going to...
Why he was there or not there or left isn't anything to do with you, sir.
Yes, I would beg to differ on that, but in any event, my point is, one thing I don't understand is that I've heard you say that you're having a hard time getting contractors to bid. And right now, every contractor is busy that's worth his or her salt. I am bidding. I've bid before. I've done jobs successfully, and I'm going to be going after the city for libel as well, based on a response that the city gave on my prior performance that can be refuted by the city's own documentation. Going through, the issue that I have is, as far as if it were just that my bid was going to be kicked out, that you have the right to do, unfortunately. If you don't like my shirt being gray, you can kick out my bid or any other contractor's bid. That's something, as a sovereign entity, you have the right to do that. The issue of asking me to, or implying that I should withdraw my bid, is a bridge too far. You should have just gone ahead and rejected my bid, because if I have to withdraw my bid, and I think the terminology used in the email that was sent to me was that, so as not to unduly prejudice me against future bids. I guess the point I'm trying to make is I have never, in 24 years of construction, been asked to withdraw my bid on any job, and I've bid multi-million-dollar jobs. And there's no point in it. You have the right to go ahead and award it to whomever you see fit. I refused to withdraw my bid. It was told to me in email format that unless I withdrew the bid would actually be kicked out and rebid, and there would be a far more stringent set of circumstances where you want somebody that has 5 years experience building single-family homes, or 3 years of building single-family homes, or 5 years of substantial home renovation. To me, I was faced with what's called a Hobson's choice, where I can withdraw my bid and appear to be inept in addition to not getting the bid that I legitimately won fair and square. Or I could just stand up and I still don't get the bid. I mean, no matter what I do, it's a no-win situation. I'm sure the attorneys know better than I about the Hobson's choice aspect of arguments. So we refused to withdraw our bid, and rather than it being kicked out and rebid with more stringent circumstances to further limit your pool from 1,100 down to 2 to 1, you're electing to award it to the number 2 bidder. of which I will say I've done research on Demand Star. 80% of the projects, and granted they've been low bidder in almost every case, have been awarded to the number 2 bidder over the past 2 years, the same bidder that you're looking to award to now. It's actually 76%, but if you award this project, it'll be 80%. The other issue that I have is when I actually filed my protest letter, and the reason I say I'm going to be going after libel is I was told that on my 2 prior projects that I was given I did 1010 Queen Street, which was basically a home that was almost occupied by somebody who was basically a hoarder, and trashed the place, put all sorts of debris and material that needed to be cleaned out, fixed up in some areas structurally, and made ready for resale. And we did that, and shortly after that, on the report card that I was given to use for the city of Kissimmee for another home that I did, which was done by city staff member, there were 3 criteria that were evaluated on that particular home, 1010 Queen Street. One was my quality of my workmanship on a scale of 1 to 5. I got a 5 on that. So the quality of my workmanship was excellent. The second criteria was my responsiveness. I also got a 5. Excellent. My third criteria, and I have that as part of your package in the documentation. Third criteria was timeliness, getting it done on time, and I got a 4, which would be good. The one point, I didn't challenge that particular point. Obviously, it was going to the city of Kissimmee, and I got a contract out of the city of Kissimmee to do a project, which there's also a thank you note from the homeowner that I did significant renovations for in the bid protest package, saying about how great of a job we had done on the job. My point is my mother was an elementary school teacher, and I'm saying this from the bid protest standpoint. 14 out of 15 is like a 93.33%, give or take. So when the city came back to my protest letter, they're now saying that on 1010 Queen Street, I did a fair job on that. And when I was growing up in school, 90 to 100 was an A, excellent. 80 to 89 was a B. 70 to 79 was a C. 60 to 69 was a D. Anything below 60, don't go home because your parents will kill you, basically, was because it's a failing mark. So from the standpoint of what's in the city's own records and the city's own documentation that I would consider to be a smoking gun in a libel claim, the city cannot sit by idly and say that I did a fair job on 1010 Queen Street when I got a 14 out of 15 on the report card from the person that is now claiming I did a fair job on that job. Secondly, on the other job that I did, 4440 Carlisle Avenue, now I'm being told for the first time as a result of my bid protest that I did a poor job on that particular project. And there is documentation in the file where we went over and above. There was an older lady that occupied the home. We did significant renovations, new roof, some window repair work, some doors, fire alarm work and things like that. I took it upon myself because part of your neighborhood stabilization package is to go ahead, the homeowner needs to insure the property because there is a lien placed against it for the dollar value of the home, or the dollar value of the repairs, and they need to insure the property at the conclusion of the job. I actually paid for the lady's 4-point inspection so that she could get insurance. She didn't have insurance on the home. I also paid for her wind mitigation inspection, and I got her a quote for insurance that she could live with within her budget so that she could insure the home to give this, because she was concerned that after all the renovation work was done, that the city would foreclose on her home or do something. I don't think she fully understood that what could possibly happen or not happen. But I did that to help her out, and I got a thank you from Neighborhood Services Department that said they never had a contractor do that for them before. This is the one that I'm now being told I'm a poor contractor. I did a poor job on that particular project. If I did a poor job on that particular project, after that project, I've been invited to bid more than one City of Titusville residential rehab projects. If I'm such a poor contractor, why would I be invited back? And secondly, I would also say, and I wish this would have been in the morning because I'm a lot better in the morning than I am after pouring some of the yards of concrete, but I would also say that I received a call and an email within the past few months, and I have it in my files, the email, from a retired city staff member who called me out of the blue and emailed me out of the blue at the same time, who had a house fire, significant house fire in Titusville. And she said, Mr. Park, can you come out, take a look at my home? And we're either going to go ahead and gut the place and renovate it, or we're going to level it and rebuild it. And I said, sure, I'll come out and take a look. I went over there, went over her problems. She needs to really kind of demo and start over, in my opinion. But I asked what I think a normal business owner would ask is, well, how'd you hear about us? And I was told Ms. Franklin with Neighborhood Services Department was the one who referred her to me. So if I'm such a poor contractor, then why am I being referred to do that kind of work? I'm hopeful. I'm not afraid of litigation. I've been involved in litigation since 1995. And I've been very successful in the clients that I've represented, including local area contractor on multiple. I've had multiple cases where I've had multi-million-dollar settlements that I've worked on with some very talented construction litigators. I'm sad in a way that, with respect to the city, I can't get like punitive damages because you have immunity from that. I can get compensatory damages and I can get legal fees. But I'm hopeful because when I worked for somebody else, I wasn't the one paying the legal bills. Now every legal bill I pay, it comes out of my own checkbook. And I will do that because I have never, anything I've put my mind to legally, when I've worked with a good attorney, I've prevailed on. And I don't think this will be an exception. If it were only being rejected on the bid, then, yeah, in fact, I even said in one of my emails, I'd move on. If it was just a rejection, but having me supposedly withdraw my bid, look inept, and that's a bridge too far. I am going to take this full throttle wherever I need to. And that's basically what I've got to say.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Are there any other cards, Clerk? I'll close the public hearing. Staff, does council have any questions of staff?
I have a couple.
Or any comments?
Well,
I'm sorry, there are things up here. I want to first make a comment, I guess. There was a lot of information that you spewed forth there, and I don't know that any of that is relevant because what we were looking for was experience in house building, and you asked that question, I think, asked for a reply at least twice. Is that the case from what I read? And
Yes,
you
sir.
did not respond to that, sir. So that's not a positive. I feel supportive of staff. Mrs. Franklin, I think, went by all the rules, and her supervisor, Mr. Vieira, agrees. The city manager agrees, so I agree also. But Member Diesel.
Well, I was just going to note, and I heard a lot up there, and I think I might have heard more about litigation than I did houses. But that being said, this is a single-family house bid, correct? Why don't you step back up there for me? And if I'm not mistaken, if I'm going to bid out a single-family home, I want to see examples of that. And apparently, there was no evidence that you constructed any single new family homes when requested, and that in your protest letter you didn't show that. And then, quite honestly, in your talk there, you didn't talk about any single-family homes that you've built. As a matter of fact, I would expect that if you were going to go up there in litigation, you'd have a rack of pictures of the homes that you've built. But if the bid is on a single-family home and you don't have any to show, why would you think that wasn't a good choice to go with somebody who has done single-family homes?
I would say, as a certified, and I run into this a lot, I don't think it's fair within the statute, but I'm a certified general contractor. That's the highest license you can get in the state of Florida in general contracting. There is a lot of latitude. I worked on Avatar. I've worked on Festival of the Lion King. So for me to say, okay, I'm a certified general contractor, you may or may not be, sir, I have no idea. You or I believe Ms. Franklin is a planner, if I'm not mistaken, plans examiner. For you to judge my qualifications for the job that I'm properly licensed to do would be merely like me saying to the city attorney, you're not qualified to be an attorney. I think that's also a bridge too far. Okay, yeah, I haven't built a single family residence, but I'm working on an 18-story high-rise currently. It has plumbing, it has mechanical, it has roof, it has windows, it has doors. I've done masonry structures, I've done metal buildings, I've done aircraft hangars. So you're telling me I can't build a little...
I'm not telling you what you can or can't do. I'm telling you they were bidding out for a single-family home, and the person who got the bid had 6 of them in the last year, perhaps, and maybe it's 2. But if I'm going to be judging on who I'm going to pick to build a castle or to build a house or to build rockets, I want to know that that's what they've done, and I want them to show me what they've done. And clearly, that's not, not where you're strong. It doesn't mean you're not smart. It doesn't mean you can't build anything. It just means they were bidding out for single-family homes, and they've got single-family homes. Again, if I'm going to put in a bid for something, I'd want to show examples of what I'm bidding on. And apparently, at least right now in your career, you can't do that.
Well, in answer to that, I think that is not the reason as to why my bid was kicked out. I think a fair reading of the record by a independent third party will prove differently.
Well, I'm just going to speak to what I have here. I think anything else would go to city attorney, and I'm going to back up on that. But I'm simply going to say that if you're bidding on single-family homes, I would want to see examples of single-family homes. And if you couldn't show that, I totally get where they went, and that's where I'm at.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. So, one, thank you for coming, at least explaining the process that you've gone through and also what you've arrived to the analogy, and respectfully, to the analogy to the attorney. I think that's probably good. But as an example, if I was getting a divorce, I would not go to Richard.
Right.
Because he is, although he is qualified to represent people in law, that may not be his specific field of expertise, although he's qualified to do it. And I think as a practical matter, having experience would be appropriate. I use, from a reasonable expectation, I think of a kind of John Stossel used to do the deal where he would go out and say, imagine this contract to a guy who's never built one before, although he's qualified. And for me, it doesn't make common sense in and of itself, although please don't take away, my hope would not, I don't mean that insulting, I'm just saying as a practical matter, I would not hope the city to be the first time specific to that project. Being said, I think, where I think that as a city council, we're well within our means to deny your bid based off of what is qualified. And the rationale is using the qualified criteria from HUD. HUD's the one who gave us the money. We're stewards of those funds. Where I think that there's probably a fair argument of concern as far as improving processes internal to the city, I think that we can improve process from this. I think that specifically stating that our criteria is exactly in adopting qualified to be determined as HUD, I think is probably internal to the city, something we could look at as a policy. But I think that the intent of council, I believe what's going to happen is that the intent of council is to use those funds as HUD has deemed appropriate. And I think probably with the qualification, I am of the opinion that with the criteria of qualified that HUD would use for housing. So that's where I'm drawing my inference from. I got to be honest, I think that should be changed probably tomorrow or brought back to council with that criteria as part of our bid process. So coming back to that, adding that language, but specific to this bid, it's unfortunate that you feel that the only recourse is a lawsuit, because at the end of the day, that there is a family who needs a house. So while we're
and there's a contractor standing before you that's perfectly competent enough to build it.
Again, I think that we have a difference of opinion of how to move forward. But what I would say is, at the end of this, there is a contractor that is capable and proven specific to this project. There are families that need this property. I would hope that we can move forward with that and say thank you for highlighting something that might be a place where we may improve process. But I think the recommendation is appropriate in that we've got somebody who's built the houses before. And for $4,000 more, I am comfortable with moving forward with that solely based off that. Relative to the consideration or points you made of libel or so on and so on, I'll share with you that is not part of my decision-making process in this. My decision-making process is HUD has a criteria. HUD gave us the money. I feel comfortable with that. And extending that to how we're going to arrive at that decision is the basis of my decision of why I would award that. And so that's where I'm at with it.
Member Nelson?
I have to agree with these guys. By the way, I love Avatar. I think you're probably the most creative person around.
There was a lot of people involved in Avatar. That's not the point I was trying to make. I worked on the Avatar team for a while.
That was a cool project, but I have to agree. You know, I did criminal law. You wouldn't want me to write a will for you. I could probably do it, but it's just not something that I would do on a daily basis. And it would take me longer and be a little more involved than somebody who does it as a regular basis. So I understand why they say, hey, let's go to the guy that's building houses. And I think you actually, he lost a bid to you. Am I right?
There was one where he had won, there were too many bids. He had won in one shot, and I think I was $100 more expensive than him, and they awarded, that was 1010 Queen Street.
Okay, and you got that one.
My issue, again, my issue is going to be, and I will go to litigation, regardless of the outcome, which, I mean, my mind's made up, and I feel I can prevail.
Okay. But I have to agree, you know, you're creative, you're probably super capable, but if I want a house, I want a house. And I would go to the person who has been building houses.
Okay. Any further questions from any council? Sir, you may sit down.
Okay.
Any further discussion from council? Staff, any comments that you'd like to make? Okay, what's your pleasure? Sure. You can make some noise.
I just wanted to ask, and as stated, do you have any questions as far as, or if staff has any comments regarding the qualifications, or anything additional to add than what was in the report?
I don't have anything additional to add to the report. I just wanted to let council know that during my tenure with the Neighborhood Services Department that we have applied the same values and criteria consistently to our bids. So, you know, it's been consistently done the same way for the last 14 years that I'm aware of. So.
Ms. Conklin, we have no doubt of it. We've worked with you I've worked with you for that whole period of time, so I have confidence you were fair. Okay, anybody like to make a motion?
I would move to deny the bid protest and approve the award of bid number 18-B-043 to Smith Development and Construction, Inc.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously, sir. Have a good evening. Antigua Bay. What? That guy's crazy. He don't look like he carries a lot of concrete around all day either, does he?
I see your thing with that.
The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this action 5-0, subject to the 9 conditions that were spelled out in your packet. Antigua Bay Phase 1 is a proposed 100-lot subdivision on approximately 62.15 acres located east of US 1 and north of State Road 405. This is the first phase of the overall project, which consists of 345 acres and no more than 2,404 residential units according to the Antigua Bay Development Agreement. The City Council approved the development agreement with Master Plan for Antigua Bay project in 2017. The master plan includes single-family home lots at the north of the property with both multifamily and commercial zone property recreational amenities such as public boardwalks and walking trails and open space. The sketch plat is for 100 single-family home lots, of Partial 5 of the Antigua Bay Master Plan. Concurrency statement, the 100-lot single-family subdivision meets all level of service standards for concurrency-related facilities, water and sewer, transportation, parks and recreation, stormwater and solid waste. Impacts to the level of service for schools concurrency will be evaluated with the preliminary plot. So staff is available and will take you through some of the items that were expressed as concerns at the P&Z meeting. Ms. Pisaka.
Thank you. There were several items, and I thought I would give you the planning and zoning recommendation and then provide some additional information. The first recommendation was to submit a traffic study. This traffic study is required by the code and will be part of the preliminary plat review, which is also when the complete engineering for the project will be provided. The second item is to identify the location of the legal positive outfall on the sketch plat. There is the location of the outfall. It is not labeled as such, and I believe that's the reason planning and zoning could not identify it. I've spoken to the engineer, and I'd like to suggest that this sketch plat be approved with the condition that the location label be put on. The third item is to identify a 25-foot natural preservation buffer on the sketch plat. This is a St. Johns River Water Management District requirement. It is not required by the city, but the applicant has stated their willingness to put that 25-foot buffer on the sketch plat. The next item is ensure that the swales on each residential lot drains away from the lagoon. This is required by statute, by code. Basically, the individual swales on the residential lot will drain into a pond, which are then treated and go to the legal positive outfall. The next item is parcel 6B public park shall be developed pursuant to the development agreement, and there are 3 requirements in the development agreement for the development of that parcel, so that should be taken care of. Next would be the sidewalks will be installed on both sides of the street per section 8.2 of the Antigua Bay Development Agreement. Again, this is part of the development agreement and will be enforced. The application owner information shall be corrected along with an updated opinion of title. They have provided us an updated application, and I have been told by their attorney that the opinion of title has been requested and that it will be here within a few days. Easements for water and sewer utilities shall be recorded with the approval of the sketch plat. Actually, those are recorded as part of the final plat, because until those water and sewer utilities are put in, they do not know the legal description exactly of that. And finally, the fire station property is to be transferred to the city per section 10.7 of the Antigua Bay Development Agreement, and that conditions of that development agreement are that within 2 years of the effective date of the development agreement, which happened to be October 24th, 2017, the developer agrees to complete an initial assessment of the site to ensure suitability for its intended use. And finally, there was a discussion about a stabilized road, and that would be created as part of the water line that has to be put in. And the applicant, when I spoke with him, said that he would be willing to put in a note saying that that stabilized road will be created when the water line is put in. If I've misspoken, I know that there are representatives here, and I know they'll be happy to correct me.
Microphone, sir.
Sorry. I think I turned it off when he was talking. So what I hear you saying is we'd be okay to sign this tonight with the conditions that certain items are brought to you.
Yes, sir, my suggestion is that this be approved under the conditions that the location of the legal positive outfall be depicted, that the 25-foot preservation buffer be shown, and that a note be mentioned about the stabilized road over the area with the water easements.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
And you want to put in the updated opinion of title?
Yes. That's been requested, and we would not move forward until that was received.
Okay.
But thank you. That would be a fine condition as well.
Go right ahead. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Bazak, this might be internal housekeeping a little bit. Relative to the conditions that are brought before P&Z, often we get recommendations coming our way. I would just share, and I would be I can't do it with P&Z, but I can, is that the recommendations that we receive that are inherent to the process that we have for development, I don't need from P&Z. Meaning that if they are recommending things that are already taken care of at some point in the process of development, I don't necessarily need as recommendations back to, I don't feel that we need them back to council. It's a redundancy. And basically, we're putting stuff in to put stuff in now instead of a little bit later that necessarily changes no outcome whatsoever. And just as a development process, I think we worked very hard in developing our code and our process to allow us a fluid development as the person who's coming in. And we have done that intentionally. And I feel that we are sometimes, we're almost at a point now to where we're regressing, that all of the work that we've done to make it a development-friendly community is we are now starting to reverse the wrong way. And it's based, I believe that it's based off of, we want to see as much as we can, but I don't know if we understand that the things we're going to see that we want to see, you're going to see them. So that would be my take back to P&Z. And as far as a council member, that's for me, I'm very comfortable with the approval of the sketch plat for Antigua Bay Phase 1. I was good right there. And that was staff's recommendation. And the basis for that is we have a staff that understands both the process and understands the portions to it. So I'm happy to support whatever conditions council feels comfortable, but just know I was good with just approved sketch. Thank you.
I see no more questions. I'll open the public hearing. Are there any cards on this item?
Yes, sir. Jake Wise, and then Christy Mount is here for questions.
Thank you. Jake Wise, civil engineer for the project. Business address is 2651 West O'Galley Boulevard. First thing I want to mention, I go to a lot of these types of meetings, and that 22-year-old gentleman that hung in here till 10:05 p.m. was very impressive. So I'll keep it very, I'll keep it very short. So we were fine with all the conditions as written. I appreciate very much the things that were said. Thank you. It is in compliance with everything that the development agreement has, and we have worked with staff through those details. So with that, I'll just answer any questions you may have and hopefully make it an earlier night for you.
Any questions? We have none. Ms. Mount, do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay. I'll close the public hearing. Any more discussion by staff? As I see it, we can approve this with the conditions. So do I have a motion?
Can I move to approve it with the conditions of identify the location of the legal positive outflow on the sketch plat, identify the 25-foot natural preserve buffer on the sketch plat, get an updated opinion of title, and a stabilized road would be created when the water line is put in.
Very good.
I had a lot of practice.
Perfect, yeah. I noticed that time again. Thank you. We have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I see none. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Sorry for the length of time. Okay, let me just get back to where we are here. No petitions or requests, there's no public. You have my mayor's report. I will say that I did not make the November 9th meeting at the elementary school event or the November 12th parish health fitness, but the city manager did make that one for me. I had conflicts in both cases, and as you can see, there was a lot of meetings and issues and so forth all during that month. So, city manager's report.
We do our part here, and during your part, the council report.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
I just want to say a couple
It
things,
doesn't say
and
that.
certainly, Mayor, I was at several of the Veterans Day ceremonies with you, and you're always well-received,
Thank you, sir.
as with city manager, to honored vets who, one Air Force, one, what were you again, Army?
Yes, sir. Army.
Just thought I'd throw that question out there. It's, I got to be honest with you, it's quite an honor to be there with those two guys, and quite honestly, when they walk around a Veterans Day event, they're kind of celebrities. They won't admit that, but it's true.
Thank you.
Parks and Recreation, we've spoken to them, and Jeff Davis was just here recently, and I commended him on the number of things they're doing now, and they're doing so many more things. And just last week, I went to a Kyler Thanksgiving event and then a Campbell Park Thanksgiving event, and they're just rolling, getting things done, one thing after the other. And then I went to the Titusville High School Band Uniform fundraising event I just want to talk about briefly, simply because if you have any way, I don't want to say get involved with it, but if you just by word of mouth, they're trying to raise $100,000 for new uniforms, which I don't believe they've had for the last 15 years. They are doing a lot of sewing to hold them together. So it was out there at, used to be the Walkabout, the Indian River Preserve or something. They had about 300 people there. I don't know how much they raised, but it's a good start. But it was a great event to be at, and it's nice to see folks going out there and just trying to raise their money. They're not asking anybody for anything, they're just raising money. So I went to a lot of stuff, and it was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And as you said, we were together at many of them,
We are at a lot of those, yes, sir, we are.
along with the city manager and sometimes other members of council, certainly. Any other council that have any reports to make? I see none. City manager's report?
Yes, sir. I have one action item. Staff's requesting council schedule a special meeting to hold a public hearing on the city's annual CBDG program accomplishments and to hear from those agencies seeking CBDG grant funding under the Neighborhood Services Department request proposal, public services activity. We set two dates, potential dates, 15 January and 29 January. So if I could
I'm
have
available for both of them.
Okay. Have you give me a good date, we'll lock
Either
that
of them.
baby
I shouldn't say
in.
both of them, either of them. We'll have two meetings.
If possible.
How about you, Member Behringer? You had it?
Sir, I will be enjoying.
You can come and watch.
I'm afraid that is not my role.
I would prefer the first day if we could do it.
Okay. Everybody good with the 15th? Okay, we'll lock that in. The legislative priorities that council set forth to add one item of vocational, we have added that item. I took the liberty without your permission, so I'm asking your permission to add an additional item, and that's to bring attention to our honorary naming of Martin Luther King Jr. Highway that will need a resolution from the state. So I'd like to bring visibility through your legislative priorities to make that happen. So if I could have your permission to add that, then
Does
we'll...
anybody have any issues with that? You got it.
We've listed the council appointments to outside agencies. That will be a decision that you'll make at your next meeting, so we wanted to get you that as a read ahead. We've also listed the Living Shoreline program with the Brevard Zoo. With that website, there's Brevard Zoo is anxious to help residents to produce a living shoreline in their home, and I think our condo is looking about doing that as well. So it's a very informative website, and we provide that information so people can be aware that that's available. And if you look at Main Street and Indian River Avenue, where we replanted that after the hurricane, it's really coming to life. It's looking really good. So I think if you want to see an example of what a living shoreline looks like, there is one right next to Wells Fargo.
Do you have a seawall?
Living shoreline, sir.
No. Do you at your?
No, we don't.
No. Oh, okay.
No.
But, you know,
What you did?
Harbor Point did talk to the zoo about it, and they came down and did an evaluation. What they're going to do is they're going to do oysters. So it may be worth the city talking to them and seeing if they would do some of that area, because they'll come in and make recommendations on this is what else they can do.
I have to comment on that because I was involved with the project that they did where we made cages and they put shells in them and no oysters in any of the traps that we put out. And I did question it and they said some areas don't have it, just don't grow them.
Well, I will tell you, the interesting thing for me, I thought was interesting, was they went and checked the area of Harbor Point out.
Mm-hmm.
And don't say this too loud, but they found some oysters. They found a stone crab.
Oh, there's lots of stone crabs in the river.
And they found grasses actually growing
Yeah,
there.
they're growing on the other side as well.
So we're getting some oysters.
Well, maybe they have, but this was
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, and all I'm saying is that at that point in time,
Nothing.
it was nothing, and so we want to make sure that there is at this point. But go right ahead.
So,
And last, sir, I'd like to remind the council and the public of all the construction that's going on. West of Max Brewer Bridge, extensive construction is underway. Underneath the bridge, that's another state project, construction is underway. Garden Street, they'll work from US 1 up to about Robin Fisher's office. That's already been awarded. You see the signs out, they haven't mobilized yet. And then Hopkins Street work has begun on the sidewalks and others, and the paving we anticipate to occur when they mobilize to do Garden Street. So lots of good stuff, and recovery from the hurricane continues.
I see Vice Mayor has his light on.
Thank you.
Sir.
Yeah, I promise I'm gonna get y'all going. So we have one more regular meeting, but the reality of that is that I love the idea that is a celebration of a transition of power peacefully, and so I don't want to disrupt that with any words, to be quite honest. And so if council would be all right, I'd like to just take maybe 2 or 3 minutes and say some thanks along the way. Yeah, as this is the last one at night. So the first off is I cannot thank city staff enough. It is wonderful to come up with some ideas to communicate that to citizens, but if there's nobody doing the work and nobody has the ability or really the vision to make that vision better, then you're dead in the water. And I cannot thank city staff's work over the years for accomplishing what's accomplished, at least in my 4 short years, for all that has been done to a community that just needed that ability from them. And so a huge thank you to all of city staff and all of the departments and all of the people that work here. I'd like to give a special thanks as well to the leadership of city staff because at the end of the day, half the things that I probably come out of my mouth were hard or unreasonable or too difficult for most, and somehow leadership has taken whatever that is and made it work. And so I thank the leadership for being able, it's hard sometimes to catch missiles and still execute a vision. And I think that every department over the past 4 years, I could name examples all day long of how they've done that. And that's true leadership. And I've never heard them say that they were the ones who did it. They've always given credit to those who do. And so you all are a part of that. So I thank you for that. For the public that has entrusted me to sit in the seat for 4 years, that is a huge thank you for that opportunity, and I appreciate that trust. If by chance I have violated that trust or I've trespassed against it, and that is inclusive of to those of you that I have served with on this council, I ask for your grace and forgiveness if that has been the case. I assure you that it is not done with intent. It just meant I may have been bad at it. And so thank you for just bearing with me as I've grown in this position. A huge thank you also to my wife, ultimately Heather, because my family, my second oldest daughter has never known a time where Dad was not campaigning. And she's 7 now. She's never known that. And for the first time in her life, I'm just going to be able to be home with her. And so we are looking forward to that. And so I know that everybody's time on council is just that. It's a part of time. Some are longer, some are shorter, but we all do the best we can for the community that we love. And so I appreciate my family's dedication for allowing me to serve. Just a couple things I'd like to pass on to council that I can't talk to you, and now it's just about the first time that I can. And so I would just share a couple of things that from others that stuck. I don't know why it stuck, but it stuck. One was from Mayor Tully, and one of his last comments was "build for beauty," and I believe that when we choose to build something, you build for beauty, and the rest of it will take care of it. One was from then Council Member Pritchett, but Commissioner Pritchett. Is at the beginning of the time of our meetings when we pray that you turn your seat over to God and let those decisions work. And that has taken an extra second to pray before the meeting. Everybody can wait, and it's all right. Ultimately, thank you. There's a good one from Abraham Lincoln, and I believe that this is true for us as council members as we serve together. That I'm not bound to win, but I'm bound to be true. I'm not bound to succeed, but I'm bound to live by the light that I have. I must stand with anybody that stands right and stand with him while he is right and part with him when he is wrong. And I believe that to be true. And respectfully, I know that at times we may have disagreed, but ultimately it is such an honor and a privilege to have 5 people, and really actually across the entire dais, that I truly would consider to be friends. I would share, I know that that's not always the case in politics, but I would, that is a true privilege. And Walt, and this is, it says, I'm a success today because I had a friend who believed in me and I didn't have the heart to let him down. And Walt, I can't tell you how much that's true. It took an act. To be honest, one of the most courageous moments I ever saw from you was before I even got up here on election day, sticking up for a guy who you believed in. And God bless, I know that there are things that I have I've just disagreed, but it's always been respectful. But one of the best things that I've learned from you is that when you believe you're right, stand firm in it. Even if others may think you're wrong, be willing to compromise. It's the greatest thing of our democracy. But as a friend, if I've ever done anything to violate that friendship, know that it was not my intent, and I value your friendship tremendously. So being said, I'm going to go home. Thank you all for the years, and if I can be of help to you, feel free to call because I can talk to you now.
Let me say, and I'm sure all of the people up here feel the same way. I want to thank you for your service to the community and certainly working with us, and we wish you good fortunes in anything you do.
Thanks, Walt.
I thank everybody for being so patient tonight. So unless anybody has any other comments, I will call this meeting adjourned.